Chapter 1. Crushing Weight. Pain. Incredible pain. This was the first and foremost thing that Naruto became aware of, as the young man once again regained a somewhat consciousness. Never before in his 18-year-long life had he experienced such agony. It was as if his whole body was on fire, as if he was being squashed to the ground. He couldn't think straight. He was caught up in this ocean of pain, and it felt like he was drowning. It would be so easy to give in, to simply let go and sink to the bottom of this ocean, and to give in to the darkness that would let him rest in peace. For a moment, he suddenly realized he was indeed sinking. He had stopped struggling. He was sinking deeper and deeper into the darkness. Just before he wouldn't be able to get up again, something snapped him out of this stupor. He was a survivor. He did not give up. He would fight. He swam. He groaned. He cursed. It hurt to put so much effort in fighting against the flow, but he fought. He struggled to regain consciousness and to get out of this clouded mind that he had somehow ended up in. Slowly but surely the blonde ninja rose to the surface and suddenly was able to think again. Shakily, he managed to stand up on the surface of the dark water-like substance. Where the hell am I? Doing his best to block out the pain, Naruto looked around. This is not my brain, the ninja realized. The feeling, the aura, and its surroundings were completely different than the place he had been familiar with in all the years that he had frequently visited the fox. He glanced around, searching for the gigantic, sarcastic fox that he had formed a mutual form of respect with in the 2 last years, which had been very tough for them both. "Kyubi," he shouted through the darkness. Silence greeted him. Naruto grasped his head, desperately trying not to give in to the panic that was creeping up on him. Where the hell was he? What the hell had happened? Suddenly, out of nowhere, a wave of memories slammed into him. He was thrown off his feet by the force and stared with widened eyes as he instantly remembered. His life was filtered right in front of his eyes and disappeared into the shadows of his surroundings. He had been fighting Madara. All his loved ones had died right in front of his eyes throughout the last 2 years. They had been the only one left in the end. He had wanted to kill him so bad. He had wanted revenge. He remembered being overwhelmed by Kyubi's chakra. Madara had been charging a jutsu when Naruto had interfered with a Rasengan. Then he had been disconnected. Naruto wasn't sure what happened next. Am I dead? Am I caught up in someone's mind? Naruto wondered, spooked out in this unfamiliar situation. The ninja felt the mental shield in this mind shift around to accept the memories that his presence carried. He panicked. Whose mind is this? His mental request was heard, and he was once again blown off his feet. Memories of another life opened up to him. He felt the mental link with his surroundings grow. This was his brain, but at the same it wasn't. This was his life, but as was his other life that he had just been watching. It confused the ninja as he struggled against the overwhelming flow of information. He was an Uchiha. His name was Obito. He didn't like the way his family cooperated. He had a crush on this girl called Rin for a long time, but never dared to voice it. He had a rival called Kakashi. Kakashi Sensei. 2 images greeted him and overlapped each other. His sensei was Minato. Another pair of images overlapped. He had his father and only one little nephew that he truly cared about. An image of a young boy flickered in front of his eyes, and another one soon followed. The second was older and more familiar to the boy. Itachi. Naruto grasped his head with a gasp. His head was aching in protest to all the information that wasn't his. He was going crazy. Stop this. Unfortunately for the ninja, the mind wasn't listening. It was happy that it could once again connect with a user after losing its connection with the previous one. Naruto couldn't take it anymore. This was not his life. He mentally shouted for help. He was losing his grip on the water, and one of his legs sunk back into the water. Help! Kyubi! He yelled. Kid, stop thinking. The familiar growl made the surface of the black substance vibrate ever so slightly. To know that the fox was still present immediately calmed the young man. At least one thing was the same. That damn fox was still there. Their souls were connected. Naruto knew that. But for a moment he had been afraid that Madara had somehow managed to get a hold of his last companion. I'm trying. He groaned. What the hell is going on? Kid, we don't have time. You have to wake up now. Get the body out of there. I only have so much energy to heal it. What the hell was he talking about? Naruto swirled around, trying to find the only ally he currently had, but he couldn't find. Where are you? Not now, kid. A rough shove caught the Uzumaki off guard, and he was flung to the opposite side than he previously had. He yelled out in pain as it greeted him once again. He nearly wanted to crawl back to the safe heaven he had just came from, but Kyuubi's words were still fresh in his mind, as was the urgency behind it. The moment he somehow regained consciousness, he realized why. Large boulders were squashing him. The no dark-haired Chunin couldn't move. His limbs were locked in place. His mind screamed at him. He had to get away. He had to move. He had to get away. But he couldn't. He was dying again. Somehow, in a desperate attempt for an escape, his mind provided him with a memory. It snapped him right back to a certain moment in his fight with Madara. It had been in this mere second that he had been able to get a feel of what the bastard had been doing with his chakra to become intangible for few periods of time. It was his only chance. Naruto desperately commanded his chakra copy the maniac. At first it didn't seem to work. He was still being squashed. However, suddenly the ninja felt his surroundings change. It felt like he was flowing through water. He didn't have much time to observe it though, as he was already moving. He pushed himself up and crawled forward with the leg and arm that hurt the least. The ninja struggled and groaned, but after what seemed like years was eventually able to push himself out of stones and into an open but enclosed space between the boulders. It was safe there. With a heavy and painful growl, the unfamiliar, and at the same time familiar, mutated body fell on the ground. The constant wave of pain was disrupted with a more familiar pain, one his mind could cope with. He greedily accepted the burning chakra of the fox demon, knowing that Kyuubi had his back with this. Over the last years, their souls had become connected too closely for Kyuubi to have a reason and the ability to take over. A human had the most control in a human's mind, so Naruto was safe. He could get some rest, or so he thought. His sleep was disrupted by the voice of the fox. "Kid, don't you dare sleep yet. You will have to heal yourself. I am not in control of this body. I can only provide you with my chakra for now." A soft choke came from the ninja's mouth. "What? I can't do that. Since when did you give up so easily without trying, brat?" Naruto growled at the fox, gritting his teeth, and snapped right back at the fox. "I never healed myself before, furball. How can I?" "No need for names, monkey boy. Now follow my instructions, damn it. I hope you have the brains to follow it." The ninja let out a silent chuckle full of disbelief, but didn't complain. It was not like he had a choice. He had to live, damn it. Following the fox's instruction as carefully as he could, while trying to make sense from it, the ninja set to work. After what seemed like ages, Naruto was finally told to stop. "No bad for a first try, kid. Now sleep. I will be able to take care of the rest." Naruto didn't even waste a second to follow that last instruction, and he let himself fall back into a comfortable darkness. Time break. A groan escaped his lips as he finally regained consciousness again. His eyes opened and took in twinkling stars in the dark sky and the familiar sigh of trees surrounding him. What happened? Had it all been a dream? Naruto frowned as he sensed his surroundings. No, something was off. He had to find out what happened. Where was that damn know-it-all fox? Kyuubi? Naruto pushed himself from the ground, realizing that he had been sleeping in a pile of soft grass. A light breeze caught him off guard, and he turned to look at his surroundings. He was standing in the middle of a large clearing, the moon shining brightly and high in the sky. He was in his mind. That Obito guy's mind. Kakashi's teammate? Alright, if he didn't think about it too much, he could cope with that for now. But where was the demon? Kyuubi! Naruto screamed again, feeling slightly uncomfortable in this unfamiliar place. A growl made him turn to the forest on his right. He ran forward as he heard it, determined to at least find something he was familiar with. "Be silent, kid. I'm trying to sleep," the fox grumbled, his massive voice carrying over the plains. Naruto, who had already been looking for the massive fox that usually greeted him, frowned when he didn't see him. He had been sure that the voice had come from this spot. He turned around, head tilted back as he continued searching for the large figure that usually loomed over him. Kyuubi? He tried again, never one to just simply listen to the fox. An irritated growl made him turn around again, this time looking right in front of him. His first reaction was one of surprise, which then followed into amusement, and eventually he couldn't hold back a few laughs. It had been a long time that he had actually laughed. "Kyubi? You look." He searched for the right word. "Different." He snorted and dared to step walk the strong trees that had seemingly replaced the bars he had in his own mind. Naruto knew that Kyubi wouldn't have the energy or the will to hurt him, not when they were in this unknown situation. So he didn't even falter in his steps as he walked through the trees that separated him from the fox, which was currently only the size of a large horse. The fox bared his teeth at the ninja, but said ninja knew that it was simply a way of showing his annoyance. Naruto flopped down next to the much smaller Thinnual fox, leaning over slightly in an attempt to check up on him. "Are you all right?" he quietly asked, taking in the fact that Kyubi only had 3 tails. "Besides the fact that we nearly died and I had to save your pathetic, but once more, that we are stuck in another time frame, and in the mind of an Uchiha the demon spat the name. Of all people, and that I just lost about 2/3 of my chakra to keep us alive and heal the body that had been practically pulverized to death. I feel absolutely giddy." Naruto rolled his eyes at the fox's sarcasm and settled himself comfortably against the side of the fox, pondering about what the fox had said. Kyubi let out a warning growl, but Naruto knew that it was just a matter of pride that made the fox this touchy. "Will they come back?" "Eventually. I will need a lot of rest. I might sleep for a long time in which you cannot always contact me." "That's good. In the meantime, you can be my pillow then," Naruto teased, rubbing his face in Kyubi's soft fur. A few seconds later, the blonde found himself upside down in the air as 2 of the 3 tails held him by his ankles. He grinned cheekily at the fox's glare. "I'm glad Madara didn't get to you," he said. Kyubi, who had been planning to drop the ninja face first to the ground, paused at that comment. The demon took in Naruto's grinning face and let out a deep sigh as he dropped him on his back. That brat had managed to get even Kyubi to like him. "I haven't seen you so cheerful in a long time, brat." Naruto, who was now lying nearly upside down on his back on the fox's first, turned his head into Kyubi's direction. "Yeah, well, everything is over, you know. I know they are all gone." His face fell just ever so slightly before he smiled again. "But they are all together, and I'm sure in a good place. Now it is over, I suddenly feel a lot lighter. It is difficult to explain." Kyubi acknowledged his short ramble with a low growl as he put his head on his paws in an attempt to get some rest. Naruto, though, still had some questions and climbed up so he could sit on the fox's back, just behind his neck. Lying down forward on his belly, he started patting the soft fur just behind his ears. "What the hell are you doing?" "I can't help it, it looks so soft." Kyubi growled at him, but didn't stop him. "If you even dare to make a move to touch my ears, then I don't care that we are connected by soul. I will kill you personally," he warned him instead, earning another grin from Naruto. "Yeah right, Kyubi." They sat there for a while, before Naruto's face grew serious. No way to get around it. "Are we in the past?" "Yes. The clash between that space dimension jutsu of that damned Uchiha and our chakra killed us all instantly. Unfortunately, or fortunately for the 2 of us, depending how you look at it, our energy, and which also means our soul, got sucked into that Uchiha's jutsu and sent us here. Since our soul needs to be bonded to a body and the boy's soul is in coma, we got permission to bond." Naruto's eyes stared at the fox in surprise. "He's still alive?" "I wouldn't say alive, kid. The only reason he is still here is because we keep his brain running. If we had arrived just a second later, the boy would have passed on and we would have been screwed, wandering around this plane for who knows how long." "Wow." Naruto wasn't sure what else to say. Now he realized that Obito was still here. He suddenly became aware of the boy's quiet presence. The boy was not far away, most likely having hidden himself in one of the foxholes that Naruto had spotted. Will he wake up? I am unsure. The essence of the boy's spirit is very strong, but the spirit itself is currently very weak. It feels familiar somehow, though. The demon moved its eyes to glance at the blonde, but didn't comment on it any further. Only time will tell. Naruto sighed, feeling bad for the other spirit. He knew he had not pushed the boy away or put him in this state, but he would be carrying the identity of the boy. Naruto's eyes narrowed in determination. He would take good care of the body, not only because he wanted to, but because he also felt this connection with the boy. He could not really explain it, but it felt as if they were close. Obito felt very familiar. Strange. The ninja decided that it must be because of the fact that he had received a couple of his memories. Pushing the thought away, Naruto let himself relax on top of the fox. I guess I will be Uchiha Obito for a while then. That seems to be the case. Now shut your mouth, Gaki. I'm trying to sleep. Naruto chuckled and closed his eyes too. Kyubi? He mumbled once he was half asleep. He only got a slight grumble in return. Thank you. He didn't need to explain what for. Another grumble followed, and the ninja took it as a "you're welcome." A smile formed on the ninja's lips as he snuggled just a little deeper into the demon's warmth. A few moments later, both were fast asleep, mentally preparing themselves for a long journey in this unfamiliar past. Chapter 2. Lifting Weights. Pain. Though it was bearable this time. With a groan, Naruto tried to move his limbs. He succeeded, but the action made him hiss as even more pain hit his senses. He kept his one eye closed, not ready to face what would happen if he were to open it. There were two possibilities. He would be able to see, but he couldn't be able to make sense of all the colors and shapes yet. The second possibility, which was also far more likely, was that he wouldn't be able to see. Either way, it would hurt a lot. After all, his right eye had been crushed too, and it had been very painful, not to mention difficult, to save it. The chakra that the fox provided was too strong to use for a long period of time in a body that was not fit to use it, like Naruto's own body had been. Naruto had argued to just do all the healing in one session, but Kyubi had protested heavily, accompanied with a whack to his head and a couple of insults about his mental intelligence, or more specifically, the lack thereof. If they weren't careful, they would be burned from the inside out, as the Kyubi had said. Now that was not something that Naruto wanted to try and find out. So the best action left to take was to reluctantly mind you follow the fox's plan, which was boring, painful, time-consuming, and even more boring. Not to mention that it was annoying that he had to follow the instructions of the "start moving, brat." Stupid fox. The fox had been a little too happy to kick Naruto out of his safe, painless state of mind a few minutes ago. Naruto gritted his teeth in annoyance to the fox, but didn't bother to react. Sadistic demon. It was not Naruto's fault that he had accidentally shifted a little too close to the fox's precious ears in his sleep. Oversensitive, sarcastic, mean, evil, sadisty, the ninja grumbled, gritting his teeth as he tensed his stiff muscles. What are you waiting for, brat? Someone to help you up? Start healing already. Groaning once again and grumbling to himself, Naruto forced himself to roll on his stomach and heave himself up. He had been in this enclosed space for about a week already. He hadn't been able to move an inch at first. There had been a light panic on how he would survive. Fortunately, a little lucky rainstorm had provided him with enough water, and the rest was taken care of by his chakra and that of the fox, before he was finally able to move a bit more fluently. Once he could move ever so slightly, no matter how much it hurt, it had been his luck to find a blood scroll in Obito's pouch and some energy bar and chakra pills that had allowed him to survive before he had finally been able to open the scroll. It had actually taken him some time to realize that it had been Obito himself who had drawn the seal, judging by its messy drawing. He could only wonder how the brat had been able to make something that complicated with that kind of inking without messing it up. Unfortunately for Naruto, he had been forced to open his right eye for a moment with some protection from the fox's chakra to study the seal and unseal everything. Everything had been blurry and dark, and his vision had been so screwed that he only barely managed to do everything before the chakra ran out. That was definitely not good. He had managed, though. Naruto couldn't help but be grateful as he pulled his sleeping bag closer to himself for support and made sure not to strain his wounds. He didn't want his bandages to become bloody. He didn't have much left. The ninja sighed in relief as he managed to sit up and lean against his sleeping bag as he settled it against one of the boulders. He needed to focus, he reminded himself as he popped one of the 3 last chakra pills in his mouth. Ever so slowly, he started gathering his chakra in his hands and brought them to his eyes. This was their 3rd healing session, and they would finally take care of the eye that had been a point of worry for both of them. They were unable to grow his other eye back for the time being. The fox only had been able to freeze the process of the connection between the eye and the brain, so they might be able to fix the eye later on. That is if his body could handle the amount of chakra. Naruto grumbled in protest as he felt his chakra flow over his sensitive eye and slowly started to follow the instructions of the growling voice in the back of his mind. Since this was not the first time he had done so, the ninja didn't really bother to protest with every instruction. It would only make the fox cranky. In the first healing, they had decided that the most important crushed organs had to be taken care of first. For example, his brain and heart had taken most of their energy, which left them with just enough to stabilize the rest of his other important organs. In their second, his bones and the other organs had been stabilized. In the third, they had healed all the organs even further, trying to complete the healing of all the organs and most of his damaged nerves. In the end, they managed to get himself out of the life-threatening state, though he was nowhere close to healing the rest of the body. It had worked, even if there would be complications with his chakra pathways. They would most likely get clustered with the fox's chakra and be blocked until the denser chakra was finally filtered. In Naruto's own body, this whole process would have taken a matter of seconds. In Obito's body, he wasn't sure how long it would take. Which was, to borrow a certain genius's words, troublesome. In order to make sure his main chakra paths would not get blocked, the two had decided that today would be the last of the healing sessions for a couple of days. The chakra pathways and the rest of Obito's body were already showing strains of the fox's chakra. His own chakra, on the other hand, was restricted to Obito's own. During his unconscious state, he had been able to find it locked away in the mental forest. He wondered how he would be able to reach it. Naruto had no choice but to stick to Obito's reserves, which were so tiny compared to his own. How did all the others manage to fight and live with so little chakra? Focus, brat. The deep grumble brought him back to his current situation. Yeah, whatever. Just a little longer, he reminded himself. Just a little longer, and he would be able to get out of here. Somehow. The ninja gritted his teeth as his eye stung painfully and would have stopped had Kyubi not spouted some threats at him not to. Don't you dare, kid. If you do that, your eye will be gone and you will be blind. Is this even a good idea? Doesn't your chakra conflict with the Sharingan? He asked once again, suddenly unsure as he felt a bit of Kyubi's chakra come to the surface. He felt the Kyubi mentally grin in the back of his mind. I am one of the few reasons those arrogant monkeys have that eye in the first place. I'm sure I should be able to tweak it. Tweak. Naruto tensed and nearly cut of his chakra supply, but was unable to do anything as the red chakra took over. No way. TSK, brat. Don't worry, I won't be able to do much. You will be grateful in the end, the fox said as Naruto growled out in pain. What are you doing, stupid manipulative F? The pain became too much, and he wasn't able to formulate any proper thoughts for a moment. Just before he was sure that he would lose consciousness, the pain stopped and the chakra subdued. Stupid brat, I might not hate you anymore. He never let the boy know that he might actually ever so slightly like him a tiny bit. But for me, your survival is the most important. Being blind will not allow you to accomplish all those silly plans that you are forming in your head. So I'm only helping you to make sure that this won't kill you. After all, you are far too stubborn and would end up trying anyway, even if you were blind. Naruto mentally glared at the fox as he finally lowered his shaking hands from his eyes, not fully knowing how to react to this. What had he done to his only eye? He nearly didn't dare to open it. Gee, thanks. Kyubi gave him a slightly rough mental nudge in annoyance. You ungrateful brat. Just remember that I'm only doing this because. If I die, you die. Right. A slight amused smile crossed the no-black-haired boy's lips as he interrupted the fox. Ignoring the fox's rambling, he slowly removed the bandage from his eyes and rewrapped it in a manner that it only covered his left empty eye socket. Knowing that he was being ignored, the fox retreated, grumbling the whole time about ungrateful monkeys and disrespect. In the meantime, Naruto steeled the nerves that had suddenly sprung up out of nowhere. The realization of how important the ability to see had become very clear in the last week. If he was blind. Naruto took a deep breath as he set the muscles of his right eye to do their work and his eye opened. Nothing. Only darkness. A choked, humorless chuckle escaped the Uchiha's lips. Of course, he was still trapped in there. He grazed up and tried to see the difference between the stones and the cracks in between, but couldn't find them. Was it night? Or was he blind after all? Had the fox ruined his eye? He stared in front of him, hoping that his eye only had to get used to the sudden darkness. He held out his hand and waved it in front of his eye, but besides the slight blow of wind that he felt, he couldn't see anything yet. Just as the ninja was about to give up, a very light twinkle in the corner of his vision caught his attention. Squinting his eye, a smile blossomed on his face as he watched the star twinkle in the sky through the very tiny crack that was most likely situated just above him. He never realized just how much a twinkling star could calm someone. He didn't know how long he had been staring at it, but it was one of the most peaceful moments he had had in a long while. Even though he fell asleep not much later, the star traveled with him to his dreams, where they multiplied and traveled with him everywhere he went, watching over him, like his friends had done into his future's past. For weeks later, Naruto's heart was beating slightly too quickly in his chest to be absolutely calm, even though he was trying very hard to be. He was nearly there, or at least he hoped he was. How many boulders were there left? He wondered as he glided through them, being careful to keep the center of his chakra stabilized. After about 5 weeks of being trapped in the enclosed space, Naruto had finally healed himself enough to get up there. It had not been easy, much to his annoyance. For one, it had caught him at surprise how difficult it had been to get used to his shorter limbs. He was so glad that he had been able to obtain most of the muscle memories in Obito's mind. It saved him a lot of time. He was also secretly glad that he had been shorn not a giant in his own body, for it made the adaptation ever so slightly easier. In the end, Naruto could have gotten out earlier, but he had been in no situation to know about the war that was out there. He had also had enough food and water from the scroll, and with some pushing from the fox, Naruto had decided to use this moment of isolation to strengthen Obito's body some more. At the moment, he estimated that he should be able to fight a genin and maybe outsmart a low chunin. He was also able to run for about an hour again. This was so much under his previous level. He could fight strength shinobi, damn it, that he nearly felt pathetic, but he couldn't complain. After all, be glad you are alive, brat. How could one argue with that logic? During his light workout, Naruto had eventually managed to come up a way to get out of the place. Madara's jutsu once again provided a solution. Unfortunately, it had taken 2 whole weeks of near-constant practice to perfect the technique. Still, it was necessary. It would be horrible if he would be stuck halfway and to die if he wouldn't be able to free himself anymore. In the meantime, once again much to his disappointment, the time between the healing sessions was being lengthened. This surely gave him the opportunity to practice being patient too. Though, of course, not everything had been bad during that time. There had also been a few progresses, like finding out he had some very good chakra control and that he could search for some useful and important memories from Obito's presence. However, besides the fact that it gave the ninja a huge headache, it also bothered Naruto ever so slightly to invade the boy's privacy. But sometimes it was necessary. In the 7th healing session, the fox had offered something that Naruto couldn't refuse, which was that absence of his eyes should be compensates with some strengthened senses. The changes were not overwhelming, not anything like Kiba's senses had been, but it helped him cope with the slight handicap just a little easier by having a better hearing. Of course, his luck couldn't hold out much longer after this. After his 9th and last healing session to bring back some strength to his muscles, his chakra pathways had eventually been blocked under the strain of the fox's chakra. This meant that he was stuck for a while because he couldn't use jutsu to get out of there. At least, he couldn't use ninjutsu on his surroundings. Luckily, Naruto mused as he walked through the stones. I remembered that jutsu, though I should have thought about it before. It had taken a few hours of staring at the one tiny crack of light to suddenly remember Madara's jutsu and to realize that it would work despite of his chakra block. Well, at least it seems like I was right, Naruto thought, trying not to become too distracted to lose control of the chakra that was coursing through his body. Naruto took a deep breath as he took in the strange sensation of flowing through the rocks. It had taken 2 weeks of hard work to get some control of the jutsu, and now he was finally walking out of the place, finally facing his freedom. finally facing the real situation. At least if he made it out of this place. Naruto let out a growl as his leg once again sank down into the ground. His hand shot out and managed to find a crack between two boulders. Only he went right through the stone as he tried to reach it. Shit. His brain screamed out to turn it tangible again, and he let out a sigh of relief as he managed to grasp it in his second attempt. Sure that he was stable once again, and would not suddenly disappear into the ground, he walked on and was suddenly met with a gentle breeze going through his hair and the sun shining down upon him. He barely noticed that he had released the strange jutsu. Naruto had prepared himself to be overwhelmed like this, though, and quickly scanned his surroundings with his guard up before he finally relaxed. There was nobody nearby. A deep breath, one without the smell that had developed in the enclosed space, was so incredibly refreshing that Naruto couldn't help but let himself take in every single detail that was suddenly overwhelming him. The smell of the trees and nature around him. The feeling of soft grass tickling his legs. He wasn't sure what Kyuubi had done to the eye, but it was as if everything was suddenly so much sharper. It was as he had seen the world in his own time through a filthy pair of glasses that hid so many colors from him until now. It was amazing. He ignored the feeling of smugness that was building up in the back of his head, coming from the prideful fox. Yeah, give yourself a star. The smugness didn't even falter. Instead, he heard a soft laugh from the fox, which made him shake his head in amusement, as if the fox wasn't already feeling too high and mighty to begin with. With another deep breath, Naruto walked forward to what he guessed to be, a small river that he heard streaming somewhere in the background. His steps faltered slightly as it came in sight, afraid to be confronted with another face. Even though he knew he looked different, there was still this expectancy to see his blonde hair and familiar whiskered cheeks. Instead, he was met with the face of an Uchiha, Sasuke, that made him startle back ever so slightly, not only because of the face, but also what had happened to it. He had seen memories of Obito looking at himself in the mirror before, but this. Poor boy. It's me now, Naruto reminded himself. Slightly overwhelmed, Naruto crouched down to study his face slightly better in the reflection of the water. His face was scarred, especially the right side of his face. Swallowing with some difficulty, he let his fingers trail over the scars. The face that was staring at him was only 13 years old, too young to be walking around with something like this. It felt so strange and disturbing to know that he was in a younger body with those scars. He realized he was lucky, though. If he was normal, he wouldn't even be able to walk. It was all thanks to the fox's healing that he was still here, but the body did not allow enough chakra to be used to heal the scars and imperfections. Maybe in the future, when the body was strong enough. Shutting his eyes, Naruto vowed to let Obito's sacrifice not be in vain. He was going to get the boy to wake up, and if this was not possible, he would make sure to make the whole world know that Obito Uchiha was not someone to cross. He would protect his and his own precious people, like the boy would have wanted him to do. For now, he would take on the role of Uchiha Obito. A month later. The next month, Naruto trained. Slowly but surely, he got his body back in shape as he traveled around to get some knowledge about the situation that he was in. Kakashi's story was enough for some basics, but Naruto had never been a star in paying attention to history, something that had now come to bite him in the ass. So he decided to train to become stronger and kept himself under the radar for now. During his travels with Jiraiya and the last year of searching for that bastard Madara had taught him a lot about traveling unnoticed. Some might have expected Naruto to head back to Konoha immediately. However, this was not the plan. He had seen the village in war. He had seen the village at its end. He had seen the village in chaos as Sasuke had entered the city. He had seen Madara's attack. Naruto was not yet ready to face Konoha. On the other hand, would he be able to turn his back to his village? Or would he solely focus on Madara? A heavy sigh escaped his lips. At least he had managed to avoid all the fights. He had heard a couple of them. He hadn't dared to check. This was the third Shinobi World War that was going on. That was not a good time to jump in situation he had no knowledge of. He pulled the brown strained cloak around him a little wider and tugged his hood a little lower over his head as he kept his pace steady. He had been walking for a couple of hours, and he was starting to feel the strain. His right leg was often the first thing to cramp up. He knew that he was nearing the Fire Country's borders, which meant that he would be forced to pass by a couple of patrols. He had no clue how he was going to do that. His skills were not up to par, no matter how much it annoyed him. He would have to think up a plan. Fortunately, or unfortunately for the young ninja, the answer came in form of a scream. His senses screamed at him at the first sound, and before he knew it, he was running. A kunoichi would never scream that way. The voice sounded young too, meaning that probably a young girl was in danger. Rin. A sudden wave of memories and emotions hit him, forcing him to move. Yes, he might be running into a trap. Yes, it might get him hurt or killed in the end. Yet, under the wave of emotions, he didn't care. Naruto was known to be reckless, even though the last couple of years in the future had forced him to decrease this, and the influence of Obito body and his own recklessness made it worse. For some reason, he couldn't stop himself. He lost control of his grip of his urges and ran. Which meant that when Naruto had finally got a hold of himself again, he suddenly came face to face with a young girl. She looked absolutely terrified and screamed when she saw him. He had come out of nowhere, and he screamed, "Dangerous," all over. "Danger! Get away! Get away!" Her panicked mind screamed to her. "Calm down. I can help." He hushed her, but she pulled away from him, sobbing silently. What is going on? Naruto took notice of the young figure of a young boy that was on her back. He seemed unconscious, as he was too heated to be dead. He had a large gash on his head and was spreading blood all over her. "Go away," she sobbed as she took, or I will she couldn't finish her threat, and instead shook as she backed away from him. The wound looked bad, if it wasn't treated quickly. Naruto's face hardened slightly, and he walked towards her with a sudden speed that she couldn't back away from. Handling quickly, he managed to snatch the boy away from her and put his hand on his forehead. As expected, she screamed at him and tried to take her little brother back, but Naruto acted quickly. Having been healing himself, even from death, Naruto had gotten some experience with the art of healing. Some memories had provided him with some information too. It seemed that the boy had wanted to gain the girl's attention by showing her some healing jutsu, but he had never gotten the chance to show her. "I will make her notice me too. I will show her that I can be strong too." Naruto smiled sadly at the memory, knowing that it could save the boy's life at the moment. It would give the cells in the flesh a quick start to heal it, while mending the skin to prevent any infection to take place. At the sight of his hands glowing green, the girl stopped in surprise, which surprised Naruto in return. She knew of healing jutsu? No time. He reminded himself and put the boy down. Then his eyes picked up the sounds that he had hoped not to hear for a while. Clang. Ching. Kunai, or some kind of swords, Naruto noted. There was a fight not far away then. Shit. What had happened? He needed to get away. He didn't have enough chakra to enter a fight against anyone stronger than a Chunin, and his fighting skills were still shaky in some areas. Not to mention that his leg was already beginning to feel stiff. He turned around to run away before he suddenly stopped. What the hell was he doing? Was he really going to leave the girl behind? The presence of this coldness towards anything but himself that he had felt just a few moments ago threw him off guard. Why was he acting this way? The girl, who had seen him turn away, panicked. Wait, please. The girl followed him and grasped his cloak. My mom and dad. She told him shakily, and his attention once again shifted to the fight in the background. Are they ninja? He asked the girl, noting with cold amusement that she suddenly wasn't afraid of him anymore. The girl was far too trusting. She shook her head. Who is fighting then? Oh, our guards. Yuki-san and Shaozan. Parents? He continued, trying to be as quick as possible and not to let his aggravation show. They are hiding under the wagon, but mommy told me to run and she couldn't talk anymore, the tension of the situation finally breaking and released through crying. He petted her head, shushing her slightly as he didn't have any time to help her. Taking note of a bush and a tree that would be perfect to hide the small children in, he pushed them into that direction. Hide there and keep still. If your brother wakes, make sure you keep silent, all right? I will see what I can do. She stumbled ahead, and once Naruto made sure they were hidden, he headed over to the fight. Hopefully this would not come to bite him in the ass too. Chapter 3. Carrying Weights. Chong. Ching. Rustle. A pained grunt. A shouted warning. Chime. Please let them be mere genin. Please let them be mere genin. The cloaked ninja silently prayed as he heard that the sounds of the fight were becoming louder. Taking a deep breath, Naruto crept slowly forwards and sneakily hid behind a tree to provide him some cover when he took in the situation. His eye spotted the wagon that the girl had mentioned pretty quickly, including the two figures that were hugging and hiding underneath it. Naruto could vaguely hear the woman whispering some prayer, but didn't pay attention to it as it shifted towards the fighting instead. The guards were pretty easy to spot. They were desperately dodging and deflecting the weapons that were thrown at them, as they were sometimes forced to engage another enemy ninja in physical combat. Naruto had to admit that it was a pretty good tactic to use in situations like this. The guards, though they had pretty decent ninja skills, were nowhere near the Chunin's level. Yes, Chunin. Shit, why couldn't it be Genin? His eye narrowed when he saw the taijutsu fighter of the two Chunin once again regain their little game. But instead of engaging the guards again like they both expected, the rock ninja suddenly sprinted forwards to the wagon. The intention was clear and his. No, wait, also his. Senses were screaming out to help them. Unable to ignore his instinct, Naruto tightened his cloak around him with the help of a little bit of chakra, and he sprinted forward. His eyes narrowed dangerously as a sudden nervousness hit him. The Chunin was too fast. He was not going to make it. This body wasn't as fast as his own had been. Move legs, move faster, damn it. The pair under the wagon screamed and yelled in fear as they noticed the sudden advance. Please, the girl sobbed. Naruto's eye widened when the thought of the girl came back to him, and something within him pushed him just a bit faster. Oh no, you don't. Ching. The kunai that Naruto had thrown was flung to the side, but it had done its job. The Chunin had seen his encounter in the corner of his eye and had acted quickly to block the kunai he had thrown to render his arm useless. The eyes of the brown-haired ninja narrowed as they quickly took him in, including his short height, which made Naruto grumble mentally in annoyance, and lashed out. However, Naruto had seen this coming and had already produced another of his kunai. The two kunai met in the middle, creating sparks between them as they tried to overpower the other. Naruto glared at the man as they stood in the standstill, both trying to get enough information about the other before they would engage in a fight. Naruto prayed that he would be able to do this. The ninja in front of him was after all a Chunin. That was very clear. Not to mention he had far more power than Naruto had. That he was far taller than Naruto was, and was, unlike Naruto not recovering from nearly dying. Well, now he thought about it. That certainly didn't sound good. Was this really a good idea? The smirk that graced the rock Chunin's lips indicated that he had come to the same conclusion. Oh. Scene break. Oh, indeed. Somehow the Chunin that preferred physical combat had deemed Naruto too troublesome and swapped with his partner, which left Naruto to fight, more like to keep dodging, the long-distance weapon user. He was fairly confident that the two guards would be able to take on the taijutsuzer together when they weren't distracted by the weapon user, but Naruto wished that the Chunin hadn't swapped. It wasn't easy to spot the weapon user when there was no one that could watch his back, unlike the guards who had been working together. After all, Obito was no Hyuga, and that damn Chunin really did like to attack one's blind spot, like he was doing now. It had only been the familiar sound of the steel slashing through the air that had made him swirl around to face the new attack. Naruto let out a curse, and he let Obito's body's reflexes take over to dodge the incoming wave of kunai. The first kunai barely passed his right eye, as if losing one eye wasn't bad enough. Thank Kami that Obito has good reflexes. If there was anything that the Uchiha found important, it was good reflexes. He was just in time when he pushed himself from the ground and twisted in the air, trying his best to analyze how the kunai would travel in the meantime. They drew in dangerously quickly as he watched, as if in slow motion. He could only hope that his body would catch up like it should. His eyes flickered to the sharp edge as they passed him. 1. Overhead. 2. Underneath. 3. Let it slip through the gap between his arm and torso. 4. It passed his upper leg with a hair's breadth. He mentally let a sigh of relief. He counted as they passed him. Luckily, it was safe to land after the first 10, and he quickly used it to back up ever so slightly. His one eye widened in surprise as another kunai appeared in the corner of his eye, and he was just in time to tilt his head back. He winched ever so slightly as it nicked his nose, but his attention was already back to his current opponent. Different angles. He was using clones then. Mentally, Naruto could help but sink to the ground in a very dramatic manner. Why? Why did it have to be a Haichunin? This was so cruel. Whoa! Dodge! The one-eyed ninja winched as another pair of kunai sliced through his cloak. Damn it! Obito's reflexes may be very good, but it still was nowhere like his previous level. As to state this fact, Naruto had cuts all over his body, and while they would heal pretty quickly, there was the danger of them becoming infected if he wouldn't be able to treat them soon. How he missed his own body. Knowing that if he waited too long, he would probably become a weapon practice target once again, he quickly drew in. He tucked the hood of his cloak a little closer over his head in order to remain anonymous. Though he was fairly confident that the seal he had crudely drawn inside of the hood would help to keep it stuck on his head. He didn't want to let them see his face. It wouldn't surprise him one bit if one of them were to recognize him instantly as an Uchiha. Naruto hissed out in pain as another blade cut his bad leg before he could move. The stability that he had built up in the last couple of weeks suddenly disappeared, and Naruto decided that he really had to end it right now. Pushing chakra in his leg, he mentally prayed his plan to work. Scene break. The rock ninja Ikaru smirked as he threw another kunai towards the short figure with the cloak. They really hadn't expected any reinforcement to come for those traitors. At least that is what he and his teammate had been told, as the small group had left the rock without asking for permission to go to the Fire Nation of all things, but this wasn't too big of a problem. The squirt shouldn't be too difficult to take care of. He threw a few Simban, but the Probabeligen saw it coming just in time and jumped behind a tree he had slowly been inching to. Studying the figure that was now trying to take cover behind a tree, the rock ninja had come to the conclusion that the ninja was indeed probably a kid, and by the limp in his right leg, he surely wouldn't be able to move a lot. Still, it didn't hurt to be careful. Kids these days should not be underestimated. Sorry, brat. Giving the figure one last glance, Ikaru quickly concentrated to form one more clone out of stone. If he were to use one more angle, he would be able to knock the kid out first and then see how much of a threat he really was. He might be a ninja, but he didn't like killing little brats. Still, he was unsure whether or not his partner would be able to keep up for much longer. So the best approach was to finish this quickly. On the other hand, the kid was mysterious. He was definitely hiding something. Some question would be better than paralyze him, quick and easy. He decided. A copy of himself formed next to him. The blue eyes and dirty dark brown hair was perfect and gave him a quick nod when he went off, already knowing what it should do. Sighing, the ninja's hand went in his pouch once again and drew out another pair of kunai. He silently sneaked to the right, so the brat was once again in sight, warily watching his surroundings. Waiting for the perfect moment, he sent a clearly visible but lethal strike towards the cloaked figure, who desperately tried to dodge. Just as the ninja expected, the cloaked figure managed to do so. However, the boy was caught off guard when another array of kunai shot into his direction from a complete other angle. There was a curse before about 5 of them caught him right in the chest, though all aimed at places that wouldn't be lethal. As he had planned, the figure doubled over, clutching his chest, and fell to the ground. The ninja relaxed just ever so slightly. Finally, poof. No, while the ninja whispered angrily, but still as he felt a certain familiar coolness against his neck. Shit. How the hell had he managed to find him through his genjutsu? It was one of his strongest. No mere genin should have been able to look through it. Who was this kid? Surprised? A soft whisper confronted him and flexed his kunai ever so slightly to freeze him as he was about to react. Damn it, the kid knew how to work in these kind of situations. He waited silently and narrowed his eyes as he felt coolness leave for just a second. The brat was going to knock him out. He would have simply sliced his neck if he had wanted to kill him. Just the moment he had been waiting for. Ikaru swirled around and kicked the kid in the stomach, making him lose his breath, and proceeded to tackle him out of the tree and to the ground. His eye widened, though, when the kid suddenly twisted him around with such an agility that reminded him of those damn tree huggers when they were fighting in the tray. Shit. Within seconds, His hands were quickly moving in seals, but the kid's hands quickly clamped around them and kept him locked in his hold. He was unable to fight the gravity. He was a weapon user and jinjutsu user for a reason. His ninjutsu was his weak point. He wouldn't be able to blast himself out of this situation. So the only thing he could do was to close in on the face that was hidden in that damn cloak and get a good look at the face of this stranger. His eyes blinked out ever so slightly as he was able to take in the scars that the kid had. That could explain the limb. The rock ninja mused as they continued falling to the ground. He wondered how the kid managed to move after Ikaru had been able to slice through one of the leg's muscles. He couldn't help feel just a tiny bit guilty now he knew the exact state the kid had been. A kid that was about the age of his own son. Yet this guilt wasn't enough to keep Ikaru from head-butting the kid's nose just before they landed on the ground. After all, it was the only revenge that he got before they hit the ground. He coughed out as they landed hard. It hurt much more than he expected. He tried to push the kid away from him, but the figure had already used his moment of regaining his senses to turn him on his belly and straddle him to keep him in a complicated hold. As soon as he noticed what the brat was doing, Ikaru tried to push once more, but though the kid seemed weak, he used the perfect technique to keep him under him. He turned his head to glare at the kid as he spoke. Why kill them? The voice sounded young, so naive. Huh. Ikaru frowned at the child in front of him. What the hell are you talking about, kid? I'm a ninja. He growled and tried to get away once more. So you would just kill a family like that? A few drops of water dropped on the ground next to him. It took some moments for the ninja to realize that it had dripped down from the cloaked figure's face. Ikaru stared at the child in wonder. Had he gotten his scars because he had been attacked himself? Why else would the kid care? Look, kid, the world is a hard and difficult place. Judging from your scars, you have faced plenty of hardness before. So open up your eyes and see the world for what it is already. Ikaru snapped, having realized that the child made no move to end his life yet. His eye flickered to the direction his partner should be. How was he doing? Do you have a family? Ikaru's eyes flickered back to the kid and remained silent. There were many times that he was not proud of what he did, but it was part of his job, his life, and his existence. There was no way to ignore an order. If he was told to kill them, he had to believe in his village to have good reasons for it. His thoughts flickered to his own family, wondering what they would think if they knew about these kinds of missions. Would his son fear him? Would he also question Hai? I thought so. The voice got him out of his thoughts. He looked at the figure that was hovering over him before he finally decided that he had gathered enough chakra. A tiny smirk was all the warning that the young teenager got before he was thrown off the ninja's back. The kid let out a groan as he hit the tree a short distance away. You shouldn't talk so much, the rock ninja muttered as he closed in on the kid. The child struggled to get back to his feet, but Ikaru was already in front of him. His hand reached around the child's throat to keep him against the tree and pulled on the hood of the cloak. He frowned when it wouldn't budge. He tried again before he smirked in understanding. Adding a little chakra to his tug, it finally moved. He moved his leg to stop the kick that the kid threw at him and rendered him immobile once again. Time for some information gathering. So you don't want your face to be seen, huh? Ashamed of your scars? He questioned, actually curious as he studied them. For a child to have such scars, he mentally shivered as he tried to understand how he got it. The kid's only eye glared at him, but he didn't say anything. What is your name? He decided to ask, but he was once again met with silence. Tightening his hold to remind the child of the situation once again, he asked again. I don't know. Oh, really? His eyes narrowed. Was the child famous enough to be seen as a threat? Was the child being hunted and afraid to give his name away? Now that he thought about it, the features of the young man did seem slightly familiar. I'm telling the truth. The teenager growled at him, and, as was his habit, the confession made him check the young ninja's eyes in order to see whether he was telling the truth or not. His eyes widened when he suddenly froze. Sharingan. Don't look, don't low, his thoughts warned him, but he was too late as they were already spinning. Sleep, sleep. As darkness suddenly started to overwhelm him, the ninja couldn't help but ponder whether the red eyes he had seen had been a jinjutsu, his imagination, or actually real. His eyes narrowed as he felt himself fall asleep against his will. Escaping from his grip, the child once again threw him on the ground and straddled him while keeping the eye on the man's face. The slight disruption of movement allowed his a few seconds to fight against the hypnotizing eyes. Yet, he could already feel himself slipping away. Well, that won't do, he thought to himself as he used a little burst of chakra to make sure to get a little revenge. So right before he was knocked unconsciousness, he managed to headbutt the kid right in the face. Scene break. Itai. Naruto winced as he cradled his nose with both his hands. That hurt. He frowned in annoyance when he felt the blood already dripping through his hands. That had been a mean shot. A very smart, sneaky, and mean last shot. Something Naruto could have come up with himself. He stayed down for a moment, caught off guard when a sudden dizziness overwhelmed him. So a shadow clone was really that tiring to make. Damn it, there went his favorite technique. Giving a final glare at the ninja, as if it were his fault, Naruto didn't even think about killing him immediately. There had never been a real killing intent directed towards him, and Naruto liked to return the favor. It might be war, and they might have attacked those people, but this ninja was not as crazy as the other one had been. No, he wouldn't kill him yet. Instead, Naruto would have to see how dangerous he was and what information he would be able to get from him. A little chat might work, Naruto decided. A perfect combination if Naruto were to say so. After all, he had a family waiting for him at home, and Naruto, while very much aware of it, would avoid killing people with family if he could help it. Instead, he would try to make them less dangerous. Naruto grabbed a rope that he had managed to get his hands on and started tying the man up. The rope wasn't the best quality there was, but it would be able to keep the man restrained for at least a couple of hours. If it took any longer, the rope would probably snap if the man were to struggle against it the whole time. So it is best to restrict as much movement as possible. The ninja tightened the knots a little bit more as he didn't know how good they were at escaping in times like these. If he was back on time, he would be able to get some questions answered. He couldn't help but grin at the idea of getting some clear answers. He rubbed his eye, his mind still reeling from the powerful feeling that had overtaken him when he noticed just how easy it had been to hypnotize the man in front of him. He was sure that he had done a couple of things while being in the man's mind, but he couldn't remember all of them. His only intention had been to knock the man out. What was wrong with his eye? He placed the last knot and cut of the leftovers of the rope. Fox, was that your doing? He was plainly angered. Naruto wasn't sure whether or not he should use the Sharingan again anytime soon. The sense of invincibility was very strong when he had used it. No wonder all those Uchiha go crazy, Naruto thought as he frowned. He had cut off the chakra from his eye already, but the itching in his eye wouldn't leave. Still, he didn't have much time to worry about that now. Pinching his nose, Naruto sneaked back to the clearing where the wagon stood. A quick glance at the scene told him enough. They had managed to knock out the rock ninja and were now taking care of the girl's parents. He did not care enough to think about what they were going to do with the ninja. Maybe questioning or something else. Those guys weren't ninja. He wasn't sure how their minds worked. It was at least none of their business. Masami. Michi. The woman yelled out desperately. It wasn't difficult to figure out who she meant. He paused for a moment, debating whether or not to show himself, but decided against it. He might had attacked, and with his right leg feeling like jelly and his head swaying and pounding at the same time, Naruto wasn't sure whether he would be able to explain himself before he would collapse. So instead, he made his way back to the place he had let the children hid, while making sure that the hood of his cloak was once again secure on his head. The girl had her hand clamped on her little brother's mouth, who was watching him with fearful eyes as he approached. The girl flinched when she spotted the blood on his cloak, face, and well, nearly everywhere. It's safe, Naruto whispered and decided not to offer a bloody hand to help them up. Instead, he gently nudged the girl as she carried her brother back, nearly running all the way. He took the little moment of peace to study her. She was little and skinny for her age, but strong enough to carry her brother around without too much trouble. Her light brown hair had been braided in two separate braids that reached down in front her shoulders. Her simple brown trousers and a light brown shirt were slightly worn out. He estimated her to be about 8 years old. Her younger brother had the same hair color, though he had a few lighter streaks here and there. The clothes were similar to the girl's clothes, though his shirt was black. He guessed the boy was about 4 or 5 years old. Mommy. Masami, was the desperate and relieved reply. The girl now really broke into a run, and Naruto stopped. He glanced behind him, then back to the scene in front of him. He really shouldn't approach them again, but he was hurt and was sure that he would collapse very soon. There wasn't any good cover nearby, and he swayed and his hand reached out to get a hold of a nearby tree. No, I still need to get information from the other ninja. Naruto felt like he needed to puke. His surroundings were twisting and turning, and he felt his body shudder. What was this? Mommy there. He helped you, came the girl's voice, and it was approaching too quickly. Shit. The guards would most likely follow. Naruto frowned and tried to push away from the tree, but his hand was not cooperating with him. No, instead he fell down to his knees and hissed as his right knee protested painfully. Voices surrounded him, but Naruto couldn't really make it out anymore. Before he knew it, his arm was slung around someone's neck, and he was carried away. He tensed but couldn't stop them and couldn't do much more than to accept his fate. Well, they hadn't killed him yet, so that was good news. WH ong him? Dientao. YO Inc. CH exhaust. Chakra exhaustion? Naruto managed to pick up and let a chuckle escape to him. Off all the things that he came up with, chakra exhaustion hadn't been one of them. Of course, now to think about it, all his symptoms matched. How foolish of him. He really should have to keep a better track of them. He felt himself be put down and tried to protest, but was pushed down gently on what he assumed to be the wagon. We got you. Rest. That was the last thing Naruto heard before he finally passed out. When he opened his eyes, he found himself back into the familiar forest bathed into the moonlight. He approached the Kyuubi who seemed to be sleeping in his cage, snoring loudly as he did. Naruto glanced at the direction in which he knew Obito was hidden. A quick look couldn't hurt. Brat, you are pathetic, was the soft growl that caught his ears as he walked away, and for once Naruto couldn't help but agree with the fox. A few days later, Naruto's eyes snapped open and scanned the campsite they had set up, as was his habit. He had awoken 3 days ago, much to the happiness of the children who had taken quite a liking to them. For some reason, they had managed to get past all the patrols in the 2 days that he had been unconsciousness. The little family had eventually shared their basic story with him. They were traders by heart. The wife and husband originally came from Fire and Rock respectively, and had lived in Rock ever since the children had been born. However, after business got worse and conflicts with the husband's family got worse, they had started to make plans to move to Konoha, where part of the wife's family lived. Unfortunately, the war broke out before they could. Once it had broken out, no sane person would have dared to move to the enemy's territory. However, once the grandmother of Michi and Masami became ill, they had decided that it was time. The parents wanted their children to see the other part of the family too, and the condition in Rock was problematic once everyone found out where the wife actually came from. Naruto didn't want to pry, so he didn't ask any further. In the end, they had admitted that they had been planning this escape for years, and that this had been the only opportunity to get past. Naruto wasn't sure how they had gotten to know about this route, but he allowed them to have their secrets. After all, he had his own. His eyes flickered to the children that were now sleeping near the campfire. They had met a large group of other travelers yesterday and decided to travel along tomorrow, as it would be safer. The guards were watching him warily, but had not been able to find any threat. How could they in this state? And so didn't bother him. Still, he knew that he was making them uncomfortable. He would be too, when he refused to give them his name. I don't know didn't really take away their suspicions. Still, it was at least better than telling the truth. Hi, I'm Uchiha Obito. I just got crushed by boulders and left behind by my teammates because they thought I was dead. I nearly was, but because another spirit is now possessing this body and brought the spirit of a demon fox along with him, I got healed. Oh, guess what? I'm actually that spirit. But please don't tell anyone. Anyway, I will be going now, because I really am not ready to go to the Leaf yet. Bye. Nope, not going that route. It had taken a few tries to let them know that he didn't want anything from them. They had been expecting him to ask for something in return of helping them. They had indirectly saved their life after all. However, Naruto didn't want anything. I'm glad you let me keep my secrets. He had instead stated, and though they probably weren't happy with it, they had accepted his silent request. The only question he had answered was when Masami asked why he didn't know who he was. I got hit really hard on the head a while ago, and ever since, I'm not sure who I am. He had reluctantly answered, twisting his words in a way that he wasn't lying to her. Naruto really didn't want anything from them. They had managed to get him past the border, and that was enough for now. Instead, he was planning to leave. They were heading to Konoha, and he would not follow. No, he would remain at the borders. He knew there should be a cave somewhere in the neighborhood. He would train there. Determined, Naruto got out of the wagon and slipped away. "Ninja-san," a small voice called out, sounding confused, making Naruto freeze in error. How had the two brats spotted him? Damn it, he must be really losing his touch. Chapter 4, Deadweight. Naruto sighed and paused in his steps. He liked the kids and decided that it would be very rude to just leave them like that. However, he didn't want to turn around in case they decided to use those adorable faces of them to their advantage. He could swear that they knew exactly how to use that weapon to their fullest potential. "Where are you going?" the girl's voice called out. "Away?" he answered uncertainly, still not turning around. "Why?" His lips pressed together in uncertainty before he finally did turn around. As the ninja turned around to look at the two children, he immediately noticed that they were indeed staring at him with those big eyes. "Because I have to find my own path," he eventually answered. The children frowned at the answer. "What is wrong with our path?" Masami asked, confused and sad. "It's not the path of a ninja," Naruto answered, not even bothering to tell them about the difficult missions he would have to face in the future. "Sorry I can't join you because I have to train in order not to get killed in all the dangerous situations that I'm sure I will get myself into." "Nope, better not tell them that." "But what if bad ninja will come in?" Michi started babbling, scared. Naruto sighed. For some reason, these kids had taken a liking to him. He had no clue why they trusted him so much, but even Michi, the young boy, wasn't afraid of him anymore, even when they had seen him without his hooded cloak. If anything, instead of becoming afraid of the scars, the children only got more curious. His ears still rang from all the questions they had pestered him with. They certainly hadn't been shy around him. "They won't," he tried to reassure them. At least, knowing the old man Hokage, he was fairly sure that he would let them enter the city. That and any leaf ninja worth their money would recognize them as harmless and not provoke him behind checking up on them. They were silent for a while, not wanting to doubt his words. Naruto watched them glance at each other before Michi gave Masami a slight shove. She gave him an irritated look, but didn't push her little brother back. "Will you come and visit us sometime soon?" Masami whispered eventually, and Naruto felt something in him crumble. His surroundings swayed momentarily before a sudden déjà vu hit him. "Nizan, will you come back soon?" A young fuzzy figure with black hair asked him. He shook his head. He never had seen that memory before. Who was that? An Uchiha? Shit. I don't need Obito's memories to resurface all the time. If that happens at a tight situation. "Maybe," he said in a distracted manner, which made the children look down in disappointment. He refused to make promise that he wasn't sure that he would be able to keep. His last promise. "Sasuke, you never know," he continued and suddenly froze once again when they suddenly hugged him tightly. His muscles tensed at the sudden human contact. It had been a long time ago that someone had actually hugged him, let alone touched him without the purpose of killing or healing him. After his friends had died, he pushed the sadness away and instead smiled. The ninja let a slight, awkward chuckle escape, trying not to show that they were hurting his leg. "Take care of each other, all right?" He patted them uncomfortably on the head. "Yes, Ninja-san." "Good." Naruto smiled, and with a last nod to the guard hidden in the tree, he slipped away. Maybe he would see them again. Naruto jumped into the trees and automatically pushed chakra in his legs. After a minute of running mindlessly, he abruptly stopped on a bench, nearly slipping in the process. His eyes widened as soon as he noticed that he was able to use his chakra again. He quickly found a place that provided him some cover and settled down. Frowning, he shifted himself into the lotus position to meditate in order to look at the chakra blocks that had been there previously. He was surprised with what he found. They were gone. How could they have disappeared like that? The fox said that they would remain there for a while at least. "Hey, fox," he called out as he stepped out into the familiar clearing. "What is it, little Gaki?" Finally figured it out. The fox drawled at him, lazily opening one eye to emphasize his thoughts. "Oh, shut up, furball. How did it happen? I thought you said that the ninja started before he was interrupted." "I know what I said, monkey boy. I didn't do anything. Well, not much. You did most of it yourself." The fox smirked in amusement as he noted the confused face of the mortal in front of him, but didn't care to explain any further. Well, are you going to X? No. Stop interrupting him. No. Would you just No. Arg. You stop. Whatever. Go away, brat. I was sleeping. The fox let out a deep, amused chuckle as the young man in front of him scowled in a rather childish manner and walked away angrily. He wondered when the brat would figure it out. The brat may be a big softy to his enemies, but a part of him had learned from many mistakes in the past. QB grinned ever so slightly. The kid was finally learning. Not that the fox cared. He didn't care at all. He wasn't feeling just a little tiny bit slightly proud of the ninja. At least that was what the fox kept telling himself. At the same time, Naruto, even though annoyed, couldn't help but ponder how he got rid of it. There was this nagging feeling in the back of his head like he should know, but he couldn't quite reach it yet. Oh well, as long as it was gone, it wasn't that important, right? Back in Rock Country, Ikaru grumbled as he finally managed to free himself. That rope might have looked frail, but it was certainly a lot stronger than he had expected. Surprisingly, the ninja had been knocked out for about 2 days. He had just managed to free himself before a patrol finally found him. He had not been amused by their demanding yet amused attitude, but reluctantly gave a report. However, they soon stumbled on a problem. Who were you fighting? Ikaru automatically opened his mouth to answer, but found himself unable to. His eyes widened in surprise, and he tried again. His 3 colleagues watched him with mixed expressions. Ikarukin, are you all right? A female voice called out to him as he rubbed his eyes. There was still strange sensation building up behind his eyes that was quite difficult to shake off. Said ninja blinked in confusion before shaking his head. I felt relieved that he at least could still talk. Something is blocking me to speak about that subject, he admitted and then raised a hand to his head. And I feel like the details are becoming vaguer. I might be slowly forgetting. The ninja surrounding him frowned. His ex-teammate looked worried, while one of them watched him suspiciously. Quit playing around, Ikirabaka. I'm not going to beg for information from you. What did you call me? The weapon expert growled, clenching his fist in a threatening manner. Hey, calm down, you two. The female member called out. She was using a tone that let them know that she was serious. Her name was Emmy. No last name. She was an orphan that had once been dropped at an orphanage, with only a small note with the name Emmy left behind. She never tried to change her name, nor did she allow any family name to be given to her. Though she was not as pretty as her name suggested, quite a few men considered her to be quite attractive. Unfortunately for the men, she didn't have the patience to deal with them and was too skilled in combat for anyone to try. Only Ikaru had managed to get her to date him for a while. Yet that had been a long time ago, before the war, and they had both agreed that they just didn't belong together that way. Repressing a shudder, the two stepped away from each other. Open your mouth, Ikaru. Grumbling slightly, the man complied. She inspected his mouth, but couldn't find anything. Odd, she mumbled. If someone had caught you with a seal, it would have explained this situation, but I can't anything. She continued, her hands glowing slightly as gave him a quick checkup. The other waited patiently as she reached to check the rest of his body, but tensed when she suddenly froze. Emi-san. This is wow, she mumbled, before focusing back on the subject in front of her. Ikaru was now feeling slightly uncomfortable. What is wrong? He tried, but the woman ignored him and gave him an order instead. Gather some chakra to your hands. Echoed through the group, but knowing not to mess with the woman when she was like this, the rock ninja didn't hesitate to follow her request. He gathered the chakra in his hands easily, silently enjoying the tingling sensation that it provided. Now what? Try a small jutsu, she said, taking a step around him so he had the room to do so. He gave her a questioning glance, but didn't bother to object. His ninjutsu sucked, but he could at least still do a few back-earth jutsu. Mumbling out a name, he pushed his chakra forward to provide the energy so that the arrow. His eyes widened, as did those of his comrades. I can't, he whispered. So I was right. There are these blocks in your chakra pathway. Whoever you were fighting was really skilled. I would have no idea how he did it. She mumbled, actually having the guts to look fascinated by the situation. Emmy, how could you? I'll calm down. I noticed them breaking down very slowly. So you will be alright in about a couple of months? What? Ikaru exclaimed in horror before anger replaced it. Oh, I'm so going to kill that he growled and froze when the others looked at him. TCH, calm down, Emmy. Look at the bright side, she said as she poked him in the side as if she was still looking him over. But, the ninja protested. So that won't be that much of a problem seeing as you will most likely be sent to lower missions anyway, since you screwed up the other pretty bad. She said in such a freeway manner that made the others wonder if she was really meaning it or just making fun of the man. Ikaru's sweat dropped. Hey, that is not TR. But seeing as you fought someone with this power, I think they won't blame you. The rest of the rock ninjas watched in amusement at the scene right in front of them. One even had to hide a soft chuckle as the male rock ninja became more and more aggravated. Could you stop, Interu? Which means that you will also have more time to spend with your family. Would you Jew this time? The Kunoichi didn't stop him, but he stopped talking as her words sank in. Do you have a family? The memory resurfaced once before it became vaguer again. Letting out a deep sigh, he nodded his head. In troubled times like this, a little bit of rest did sound very appealing. He could finally help his son with throwing Simban, and little more time with his wife would also be very much appreciated. Fine, he grumbled. I guess I won't kill the little brat. Little brat? His team echoed, making Ikaru tense when he realized what he had just admitted. Of all the things that he couldn't share with them, it had to be this that slipped out of his mouth. Seriously? Emmy chuckled, before she and the others started laughing rather loudly. Ikaru growled at them and charged forward to playfully tackle them. On the other hand, if I meet him again, I will kick his ass. About 3 months later, hidden behind a camouflage of trees and leaves, a lone figure was staring at the small fire he had just managed to get started. Looking at the figure, most people would have been scared away. The stranger's face, the parts that were visible, looked like it had been maimed. There were ugly scars and marks covering the boy's flesh, which even the boy's friend would not heal, for its chakra would hurt this body extensively if he were to use it any further. The only thing they could do was to continue healing the body little by little. The young stranger had already accepted this, knowing that its sacrifice had saved the life of a man that he held dear. Obito, you really are a good person, you know that? The stranger mumbled to himself, having just awoken from another flashback of another memory that belonged to the boy's life. Something that often happened to him in the last 3 months. Any outsider who saw him say that to himself would have claimed the boy to be a bit whacked in the head. However, seeing as how Naruto was in control of the body, one might overlook it for this time. The young boy had let his hair grow in the last couple of months, and it covered his left eye as he looked down at the fire. He had gotten used to wrapping a couple of bandages around his face. It especially covered his left eye and the right part of his face that had not been able to heal properly without a medical ninja to attend to him. Naruto had complained many times that it reminded him of Danzo, which was mainly why he had tried to wrap it in a different style. The goggles that he had been wearing when he had awakened had been partly broken and hung around the boy's neck. If his face had been healed, he would have worn them, but unfortunately it still hurt to wear it. The skin was still sensitive there. The ninja also still couldn't use his right eye for a very long period of time, even though he had been recovering for about 4 months already. Still, he could activate his Sharingan on demand after about a month of trying, and 2 times of passing out because he didn't notice how fast his chakra had been running out. This forced him to sometimes become blind in the cave so that the eye got some rest. Yet, this didn't mean that Naruto hadn't become stronger. In the last couple of months, Naruto had been training his new body extensively ever since he had reached the cave. While nowhere near the level he had gained in his own body before he was sent back, the practices were getting easier and easier. Naruto estimated that at his current level he could manage to defeat a Chunin now, and with a little bit of effort and normal, to higher level Chunin. That is if they didn't fight for any longer than half an hour extensively, and he had not been pushing himself too hard beforehand. If he were to use his special powers, he might be able to take on someone with Jounin level. That is, if he got enough chakra and got him or her within a few blows. He sighed in a depressed manner. Had he ever mentioned how much he hated having to revalidate the normal way without Kyuubi's chakra or a healer to help him? So far, Naruto had been fairly content with his progress, although he hated the fact that it took so long. The process of letting this body get used to the red chakra was slow and painful. Naruto poked the fire with a short stick, letting his right half-lidded eye stare into the enrapturing show of light. His body was finally ready to travel, but the ninja was suddenly feeling reluctant. If he were to go back, he would change a lot. He could disrupt the timeline. On one hand, he could save so many people. He could warn them about the threats that Konoha would face in the future. On the other hand, he could also change things accidentally for the worse. Besides that, there was the fact that nobody would probably trust him. After all, how could he have survived something like that? He would probably be seen as an imposter. But then what about Madara? He glowered simply by thinking the name, before shaking his head. How would he stop the other Kyuubi? What about his father? His mother? What about Kakashi Sensei? It felt wrong to confront them as someone he had lost, while he wasn't actually Obito. But would he let Kyuubi roam again? Would he let his father sacrifice himself again? Would he let his mother die? He probably wouldn't. But how the hell would he be able to stop the Kyuubi of all demons at his current level anyway? He didn't have the toad contract either anymore. He had already tried and failed summoning a toad. The Rasengan was a big no, and using the fox's chakra was also not a good idea, which left the Sharingan, but he was not even close to mastering that stupid eye. Naruto let out a heavy sigh. This topic had been on his mind for a couple of months already. Kid. Naruto's head snapped up. It was rare for Kyuubi to contact him when there was nothing wrong. The lazy fox liked his sleep after all. Yeah, Kyuubi? How much I hate to say it, the Sharingan you now possess is one of the strongest I have ever encountered. Naruto frowned, not understanding what the demon was trying to tell him. Was this about the fight nearly a month ago? So what does that mean? Naruto thought right back. They were both well aware that it was difficult for the ninja to use the Sharingan in his current state. It might be one of the few to rival Madara's power. The demon admitted, and Naruto finally read between the lines, something that the demon had been forcing him to do the last couple of months in their discussion, because the great Kyuubi could not work together with a knucklehead that would take everything for what it was. So you were saying that I might be able to control the other you? Naruto couldn't help but sound doubtful at that statement. Yes, not only because of the eye, but for a demon, time and space is not as strictly bonded to them as it is to humans. A connection between two souls, on the other hand. Naruto's eyes widened. The other you is already connected to me? In a sense, I would have to merge. There was a heavy pause. Shit. Naruto poked the wood in the fire a little more angrily. You would be free for a moment then, and if I can't control your furious self, everything will be screwed. At the same time, if you were able to get free from Madara, you would eventually be found by the Akatsuki. Naruto ignored the fox's protest, as they both were fully aware that the fox, while the strongest of all demons, did have some weak points. Madara would find any way to get him back, then put into that freaky statue and forced to merge with all the other demons. However, if we are once again completely connected by soul, they won't be able to do that. There was another heavy silence. So you actually want your other self to be connected with me? Naruto could feel the fox grinning in his mind. You may be annoying, brat, but if I were to be connected to someone, I prefer to have someone strong-willed, however much of an idiot. Hey, you might be nearly all the time. Hey, I have actually been enjoying this little adventure with you. At least you are entertaining in contrast to all those previous containers. So waiting a little longer until you die after having taken care of that damn Uchiha won't be that bad. He what? Naruto blinked in surprise. Forget it, kid. While nearly having to rebuild this body, I'm finally slowly managing to widen the pathways of the chakra, much like the ones you had when you were younger. Once the body will adapt to the presence of my chakra, my other self could merge with me. Hold it, Kyuubi. What can go in, can also get out. How do I know that you won't merge with the you that is standing right outside of your body? They might be friendly with each other, but Naruto was full aware of the fact that the fox liked its freedom. Kyuubi's mental grin widened even further, and Naruto repressed a shudder. You simply don't. You know that Madara would fie. Naruto was too late, as the fox had already gone back to his sleep, most likely believing that the Uchiha brat wouldn't be that much of a danger to him, and Naruto was left behind with a sour expression. The fox really had to stop cutting him off like that. While the conversation let him know that he could stop the Kyuubi from attacking the village, He also realized that if the fox were to break free, he would definitely go after Madara. Who knows how many people would get hurt in that little hunt? Naruto ran his hand through his hair in worry. This is why I don't like to do a lot of thinking, he thought as he massaged his temples. It was far too tiring and depressing. The ninja closed his right eye, keeping track of the heat of the fire by the slight orange glow that filtered through his eyelid. There was still would attack in a couple of months. It would be enough for him to get strong enough to take him on, but if what Kyuubi said was right, what the hell was he going to do? He would have to warn Konoha, and he really didn't want to confront the memories of that place. He would be far too distracted to fight. A sudden idea hit him, and for the first time in a few weeks Naruto actually smiled. He did not need to disturb anything. He would not have to go back to Konoha yet. Well, at least not enter Konoha. He just had to make sure that he would encounter the Kyuubi after it was released from his mother, when it was on its way back to the village, and before his father would fight him. Before either of his parents was killed. He would somehow have to evade Madara and take control from there. That way, he would render Madara's plan useless and release his mother from the burden of keeping the demon within her. If he were fast enough, he would not need to interfere with the people that were not really his. He would be able to wander around the countries for a while before eventually returning to the Leaf when Obito woke up. Yeah, he would wait for Obito to wake up instead. It was only fair. With that decision, he ignored his aching heart that wanted nothing less than run back to Konoha and meet his parents. About a month later, the ninja staggered on his way to his cave, ignoring the limb that he had difficult to repress in the last hour or so. Stupid rock ninja, messing up with his bad leg again. Naruto groaned out in pain as he grabbed his side. Alright, maybe it wasn't the rock ninja's fault. Damn, he just had to push himself a little over his limit, didn't he? Naruto sighed in annoyance as he finally gave in to the urge to lower himself to the ground, knowing that if he were to go any further than this, he would fall headfirst to the ground. It was not like it hadn't happened any time before. The ninja rubbed his nose at the memory as he caught his breath. He managed to lean himself against one of the trees that were lining up on small muddy road that was rarely, like never, used. The ninja was still in the outer skirts of Fire Country, pushing himself to become stronger in preparation. Taking another deep breath, he frowned slightly at the pain of his leg. He had pushed too much chakra through it when he had to take a quick jump to get out of sight of his invisible enemy. He had, of course, remained unnoticed, but he was now paying the price. That and the fox now labeled him a mental nutcase, though that comment had been easily ignored. His eyes twitched as he stretched his leg, knowing that it would be sore for the next couple of hours. His only eye, this time hidden by the familiar pair of goggles, surveyed his surroundings. Normally his instincts would be screaming for him to get out of the way, even though it was a small, tiny, muddy road, out of plain sight. But for some reason, he felt strangely calm. Still, just to be sure, he managed to shuffle himself on the other side of the tree though. As this was a route he usually took, he had luckily discovered that this tree had a slightly hollow space that he could hide in, so that any passerby would ignore him. Finally feeling like he could get some well-deserved rest, his right eye dropped ever so slightly. He was so tired, having been living on what his surroundings provided and paranoid about any enemies near, he had not been able to get the rest that his body needed. He felt himself sack forward ever so slightly. Naruto groaned. He shouldn't be falling asleep, not in times like these. So the ninja decided to take a slight nap instead. It was only his hearing that saved him from being completely caught off guard. There was a sound of ninja rustling through the trees above him. He recognized the sounds, their tree-hopping technique. They were Konoha ninja. No threat, his mind categorized the newcomers, though one chakra signature felt strangely familiar. Where had he felt that before? His hearing picked up an order to stop, and the group was silent for a moment, as they must have taken notice of him. Chakra. He barely heard someone call out. Naruto tensed and returned to his full awareness, though he kept the image of being asleep. Suddenly, there was a loud gasp, and one of the ninjas suddenly appeared in front of him. It took Naruto a lot of effort not to tense. The ninja was close, most likely crouched just in front of him in the opening of Naruto's little resting place. Please go away. Please don't let it be anyone that knows Oh. He mentally prayed. Oh, Obito? There was a waver in the man's familiar voice. Obito, Naruto finished with a mental groan as he forced himself to keep very, very still. Maybe the ninja would let him alone? Maybe he would be able to slip away? Oh, who was he kidding? Naruto mentally sighed and summed the situation up in one single thought. I'm so screwed. Chapter 5, Reluctant Wait. I'm so screwed. Naruto thought in a rather dramatic manner, but kept silent. Uchiha Obito, is that you? The voice asked more firmly this time. It had an underlying shakiness to it, which could indicate that Obito could be someone dear to him. That only made Naruto tense up even more. The shinobi wouldn't let him escape if he was. This was not going according to plan. He was glad that he had pulled the goggles over his face before he went to nap, even though they had been damaged. It gave him some sense of security as he tried to see what, or even better, who was approaching him. The one-eyed shinobi subtly peeked at the figure in front of him, but he could only see the standard shinobi outfit. Lifting his head would catch the man's attention, so Naruto refrained from doing so. Too bad that the man was already planning on getting his attention anyway. Naruto blinked slowly and startled ever so slightly, as he was not prepared to suddenly see a hand reaching out for him. Too close. Too close. Naruto's instincts kicked in and he intercepted the hand, which had been slowly reaching forward to touch his shoulder, with a quick slap to the side. His eyes snapped open, which he could only open as far as being half-lidded in panic, and he moved. Move. Get away. Get away. His mind screamed at him. He managed to slip past the surprised man in front of him and heard the voice shout in order to stop him. Obito, wait. Naruto didn't listen. He was not the person that the man was calling out to. Even though the memories that were currently rushing through his mind might say otherwise, he was not Obito. The memories caught him off guard. Sure, but he wasn't Obito. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Obito. Get out of my head. Obito, another voice said with an annoyed tone to it. It wasn't me. Shut up. The inner conflict only caused the young boy to become more confused, and he was slowly losing track of himself. He was not Obito. He was not part of Obito. Obito was not part of him. Go away. Go away. What was going on? With a frustrated growl, he sprinted forward even faster. Stop him, don't hurt him. The voice sounded familiar, too familiar. Obito calmed down. I'm trying. Oh shit. Oh shit. He managed to run past one other ninja and dodge a grab from another, Chunin realized, before his leg protested. Shit. The muscle suddenly went slack and he lost his balance. His knee hit the ground and he caught himself with his hand, ready to sprint away again. I'm not going to push myself that far in training again anytime soon. I should have known better. He scolded himself. He might have been in an isolated area, but this proved once again that that wasn't a reason to become less paranoid. The young ninja bared his teeth in frustration as he started to take another sprint. Unfortunately, he never got the chance. The raven-haired Uchiha growled out in pain as he was tackled to the ground. He noted that the technique that was used, having arms wrapped around him and no weight being pushed on him as they fell, was one of the gentlest techniques for tackles. This only gave him more confirmation that he was in the presence of someone close to Obito. The second that they lost their momentum and laid still, the attacker pushed him to the ground, restraining him in the process. Obito's eye widened. His escape was cut off. No. He started thrashing on pure instinct. Most of his skin was still tender from training and the accident, even after all those months. He hissed out in pain once in a while, but despite the fact that it hurt, he struggled against his captor's hold. He tried to grab one of his few remaining kunai, but they stopped his hand from reaching in his pouch. He growled out. He tried to bite. He tried to claw at the hand that was keeping a hold on his arm. He tried every little trick, even trying to hit his captor in the more sensitive part of his body. Calm down, the one on top of him said as he managed to stop the cheap shot with his own leg. Naruto's eye narrowed as he noted that it was the very same voice as before. That didn't do anything to calm the boy down, though. He didn't listen to the man at all. He refused to accept that this was actually happening. This was not going according to his plan after all. He had a plan. He couldn't go there. Unfortunately for the black-haired ninja, he didn't have much energy left and eventually ended up panting ever so slightly with his escape still cut off. His chakra was restless, and he felt a slight pull in his chakra core from something that he couldn't describe. He would need to be careful, he realized. He didn't have that much chakra left, not enough for one of his hidden cards anyway. He decided to spare as much energy as he could for the moment he would need it. Need to rest only for a little bit, he thought, refusing to think that he was giving up. His captor hadn't really moved that much whole the time he had been fighting him. Though, after he noticed that his comments were not heard, he had been strangely quiet. As Naruto still laid there restrained as he was, Naruto slowly became finally more aware of the other voices whispering to each other. Is it really him? How is that possible? There was a short silence, and from experience Naruto guessed that they were signing to one another. The chakra signature matches perfectly. No way someone can copy that amount of chakra of someone without letting a single bit of his own leak through. Besides that, I know his signature. I checked his chakra. Naruto's eye narrowed at the comment. So he had been the source of that strange pull on his chakra. It is really him. The male voice on his back stated. What the hell are you talking about? Naruto growled at the ninja surrounding him. He had no clue what he was doing, but it felt right to play the victim for now. Being a victim meant being underestimated. Being a victim meant still being able to escape later on. Yes, that did sound like a good plan. He shows no recognition, one ninja muttered. What is wrong with him? He heard an unfamiliar voice whisper. There were a few more hushed whispers in the background around him that didn't catch Naruto's attention as he was once again too caught up with trying to struggle against the man. Said man kept him with little effort to the ground by pushing his knee to Naruto's back, patiently waiting for him to stop struggling again. It was as if he knew exactly how to restrain the boy. So if he knows Obito's tricks, Naruto thought. After a few tries, Naruto tried some of his old tricks, which seemed to catch the man off guard ever so slightly. Yet the man wasn't a ninja for nothing it seemed, and caught up right away. His chakra was too low to blow the man away, and, in the end, he still was a leaf ninja. He didn't want to fatally hurt a fellow comrade. At the same time, the man was becoming impatient. Reluctantly, he pushed also his elbow in the teen's shoulder blades as he nearly managed to slip away. Obito, calm down, it's me. Sensei. There was that annoying goody talking to chilled tone in his voice again. Let me go? Naruto snarled out, still feeling panicked. It wasn't really him, right? This was messing up his plan even more. He couldn't go to Konoha. He was only here to prepare for the other Kyuubi and confronting Madara. He had to do that all alone. He couldn't face all those faces again. He didn't want to mess things up again. More hands joined to restrain him, which acted more a show of power than the fact that it was nearly necessary, and he eventually was really too tired to continue. He stilled and let his cheek rest on the ground, panting from all the effort. Sweat dripped down his face, and some of it was soaked up by his bandages. The weight on his back shifted ever so slightly, and he was carefully heaved up in a sitting position on his folded legs. Naruto felt the presence on his back leave and shut his eye as it started to throb painfully. He stubbornly tried to pull his arms free from the other hands, but it was no use. Obito? Naruto only had a second to decide on what to do. He wasn't able to pretend that he was really Obito. It felt wrong, so he decided to use a different approach. He stilled and didn't react to the name. Obito? He was lightly shaken, but he refused to react. I'm not. He snarled it out before he quickly pushed his lips into a firm line in a stubborn manner, as if he refused to talk. There was a tense silence. You are not what? The man asked him. He refused to talk, and the man sighed so slightly. I'm going to take off your goggles, all right. The familiar voice mumbled to him as if to calm him down, but Naruto only bared his teeth in warning. His body was 13 physically, meaning a few childish actions were allowed. So Naruto thought it was totally acceptable when he tried to bite the hand that pulled off his precious goggles. He tried to glare, but his eye protested at the sudden increase of light. So he closed it as soon as he felt the cold air touch his formerly protected skin. Give that back, he yelled. He tried to stand back up to tackle the man personally, but he couldn't. Don't touch my goggles, team. It was something valuable to him. He knew that. He struggled once more against the hands holding his arms and legs, but he was too weak. He had been training for months to get some of his strength back, and here he was, unable to even force the ninja around him to put some effort in restraining him. He wasn't even able to pull off that time and space jutsu with the amount of chakra Obito's body currently had. How pathetic he felt. Truly utterly pathetic. Those scars. One of the other ninja whispered softly, so silently that he probably shouldn't have heard it. For a kid his age, another whispered right back. Oh great, were they going to pity him now too? Having paid little to no attention to the man in front of him while listening to the others, he twitched and startled back ever so slightly as a soft wind blew across his face. What the hell was that sensei doing? As he peered, unnoticed by the others through the lid of his eye, he noticed that a hand was moving in front of him from one side to the other, trying to find out whether he was able to see what was happening. Naruto didn't respond. His right eye still sometimes hurt when he used it, so he wanted them to underestimate him as much as possible. How did you get here? The man asked and tapped him on his head to get his attention and gained a flinch from the boy at the same time. Naruto kept silent, showing them that he was stubborn. Answer me, and you will get your goggles back, the man said, sounding slightly amused, as if he knew he would get what he wanted that way, which was completely true. That was a low move. Effective, but low. Fine, he would play along. He bit his lip as if to restrain himself before he snapped out once again, as if he was giving in. I needed somewhere safe before going home, he mumbled, deciding to tell the truth. What is your home? Another question? That hadn't been the deal. He growled ever so slightly to let his annoyance show, though they were most likely fully aware of it anyway. Leaf. That place with the faces. Konoha. Even indirectly saying it out loud made Naruto's stomach clench with homesickness. The ninja really wanted to return to his home, the village he had sworn to protect, the fond memories he had there. Unfortunately, and that was exactly the problem, the bad memories came from the exact same place. There was a slight pause, and he flinched when two hands were put on his shoulders. He lowered his head closer to his torso in a defensive move, a way to decrease the amount of neck he exposed. It was a typical instinctive move that ninja made when they were not comfortable. Naruto never thought that all those lessons from Jiraiya on behavior of shinobi and people in general were actually that useful. The hands on his shoulders twitched ever so slightly, which showed him that the man in front of him had noticed the move. Obito, I want you to listen very carefully to my voice. Does it seem at all familiar to you? Naruto's first instinct was to shake his head very quickly. No way. He did not know him. He was not going to listen to the rational part of his brain that was being overwhelmed with all those memories of Obito that were actually providing the right information for him at that moment. Yet, Naruto felt himself starting to slip against all the memories that he'd gotten from Obito. Obito's life nearly screamed at him to respond. Instead, he forced himself to scrunch up his face and be quiet. Unfortunately, the long silence that followed made him edgy, and he eventually couldn't keep silent any longer. I know your voice from somewhere, he admitted towards the voice, so quietly that he wasn't even sure whether the man had heard him. Do I know you? He quickly changed his statement, as if afraid of the answer. The man in front of him paused, as if pondering about something, before the voice suddenly barked sometimes out, making Naruto flinch. You're late. Oh. Before Naruto realized it, one of the suppressed memories was triggered, and he couldn't stop himself as he started mumbling through some stupid excuse that Kakashi Sensei would use when he was late. It was then when it finally clicked. His brain finally calmed down, and the confusion that had been overwhelming him mostly disappeared. His mind finally made a connection to the familiar voice, and he flinched back in surprise, as he couldn't deny the truth any longer. Was it really him? He knew that the voice was familiar, having heard it before that one time in his mind. Still, to actually hear it in real life was different. He shook ever so slightly as he slumped forwards, as the rush of energy left him. He was reluctant to actually see the truth. Obito-kun? There was an uneasy and questioning tone as he said the simple name. Naruto flicked his eye open for a moment, trying to exaggerate how much it hurt him to open it. A ninja always had to be careful. However, as soon as he came face to face with the familiar person of him, he relaxed. The man in front of him, the blonde hair and the blue eyes, his expression, his familiar face, he could trust him. Every ounce of his body was putting his trust in him. There was no way for Naruto not to go with the flow. Just how much had Obito trusted him? Mi Minato Sensei? He whispered in shock as if he suddenly remembered the name. At least that was what it looked like for outsiders. In reality, Naruto was just too shocked that he was actually meeting his father, something he never imagined to be possible, face to face. Of all the people in the shinobi world he could have met in this isolated piece of land, it had to be his father. A few chuckles escaped him before he was quickly caught up in laughing and eventually found himself unable to stop. Obito? He chuckled to himself. I'm Obito. He managed to keep the questioning tone out of his voice this time. For others, it might seem that he was actually remembering, but for Naruto, it was more a statement for himself. He had failed Obito, and he now actually had to take up his identity. He had no choice to be Obito from now on. Mentally, he apologized to the figure still peacefully sleeping in the back of his mind. Naruto closed his eye, still laughing, but had just been able to see his sensei's face turn into a troubled frown. He couldn't stop laughing, and the grip of his sensei's hands on his shoulders was slowly becoming tenser. Obito-kun, calm down. Naruto couldn't help himself anymore. Just the whole situation was just too funny in a horrible, sick, and twisted way. His emotions were peaking, and the memories of Obito weren't helping either. Obito. He tried to hold back a chuckle, but it only came out as a sob, and before he knew what was happening, he had turned into a sobbing mess. As the hands around him gently released him, he let himself be pulled into a gentle hug. He felt the corner of his eye water ever so slightly and did his best to keep himself from crying. Shoo, it's all right, Obito, you can cry. Let it go. The warm presence around him and the amount love that he could feel was directed to him was calming. It all felt so right that Naruto couldn't help himself and let a couple of tears escape. He hadn't cried for a long time. I'm not crying, something is in my eyes. He mumbled into the man's jacket as another memory resurfaced. Minato let out a happy chuckle, his heart nearly exploding with relief as he had his previously dead student in his arms. His comrades respectably let them have their moment, silently applauding the fact that the young teenager had somehow, how the hell did he do it, managed to survive the whole ordeal and get back home. It was a miracle that, for a moment, made the whole grave situation of the war seem a little less darker than it was. Minato didn't know how the kid had managed it or what had happened, but at that moment Minato didn't care. Because the child he held in his arms was Obito, all right. Sleep, Obito. Get some rest, he muttered to the boy, knowing that they had to get back to the village, and it would be easier for him to carry the stubborn child than to let him insist to walk on his own. It wasn't like he was able to answer any questions in his current state. Donne sleep, the Uchiha mumbled tiredly. Minato chuckled and patted the boy on his head. I insist. The teen grumbled in protest, and, maybe realizing what he was planning, started to push away from him, but Minato was already ready to strike. Subtly, he had moved his hand just so that it was posed right above the boy's neck. The boy didn't tense, however, showing the trust he had in him. With a sad smile, he pressed down on one of the pressure point, trying to make it as painless as possible. Mean was the only thing that the man could make out of the last grumbled words of the teenager before he was unconsciousness. He caught the boy's weight with ease, frowning at how light the ninja was. What had the boy been eating? His student certainly had a couple of difficult months behind him. His eye scanned the injuries that the boy had, wondering how he could have survived the collapse of all those boulders. He would get the story eventually. For now, he had to take proper care of the injuries. Let's go and set up camp. Then we will perform first aid on Obito before heading straight to Konoha. Does anyone have objections? There was a slight awkward silence that Minato frowned slightly, before he eventually nodded. And we will check his identity extensively, though I can assure you that he has shown enough responses that only Obito should know. Should. You never knew for sure when it concerned ninja. Still, Minato tried to not let that possible situation get to him. He would find out how his student had survived eventually. He just felt the connection to the boy, and now he had once lost him. It was even stronger than before. His heart soared with joy at the thoughts of his team being reunited again. Rin and Kakashi would be so happy and relieved. Any further objections? He asked. Nobody had one, and with that decision, they continued on their way to Konoha. Only this time with an extra passenger that was sleeping peacefully and eventually drooling on the back of the yellow flash. Scene break. Naruto was not surprised when he was flung back into his mind. It had not been the first time that he had been knocked out like that, or had it? Had it been Obito that had been knocked out like that many times previously? It was starting to get more difficult to keep the memories apart. Naruto frowned in unease, but shook it off instead. He had someone to talk to. He had felt the fox musing about something for too long, which meant that he was either planning something or that something was wrong. He probably wouldn't be happy either way. What is wrong, Kyubi? Out with it. There was a low grumble at the disrespect, but the fox decided to let the comment pass for this once. We have a problem, kid. What is it? Naruto questioned, more than used to the fact that he always had and always would have enough problems to solve. We are going to die. Well, that was a little more serious problem, all right. Naruto turned around to face the fox that was watching him from the distance from behind the trees, which were functioning as the parts of the seal. He looked at the demon confusedly. Why? You will be born in a couple of months. Your soul is coupled to the new body. It won't take up any other soul since it is yours. If your previous infant soul were to take place in the body, it will clash with your presence. After all, you are still you. Someone else will be me? No, it doesn't work like that exactly. Why not? You still think you are you. You are claiming the body, the place of the soul this way. I won't bother explaining the workings behind that, Gaki. There are several scenarios that could happen. 1. Your infant body dies soulless while we are pulled out of this body, and we either die or roam around the world for who knows how long. That, or we are stuck in this body. Scenario 2. We get sucked into your body, and this body will die. Naruto's eyes went wide in shock. He could not let his future other Naruto self die, but neither could he just leave Obito behind. He just couldn't. Scenario 3? He pleaded, hoping the fox had won. Kyubi, who had grown ever so slightly in the couple of months of rest, stared at him. For once he was not glaring, but instead the fox was studying the mortal in front of him. His eyes flickered over to the sleeping figure not far away and then back to Naruto. I'm still unsure. The fox growled. Come back later. I need some more thinking to be done. Go do that sealing that you were just planning to do. I don't want any other hairless monkey visitors in here. I'll help you out when you start. With that last comment, the fox walked away from the trees and disappeared into the shadows. Naruto watched him go with a rapid heartbeat. Shit, he thought. Well, if I have to choose, I prefer not to wander around aimlessly for eternity with Q. He mumbled softly to himself, shuddering at the thought. A slight mental nudge let Naruto know that the fox thought exactly the same on the matter. Smiling ever so slightly in amusement, even though his usual enthusiasm was gone, Naruto stared in the direction of the figure that had been lying there unmoving for a couple of months. There was a certain pull towards the figure that Naruto still couldn't explain. He had not voiced it yet, so he wasn't sure whether Kyubi was aware of it, but he realized that he couldn't keep silent on the matter much longer. He has been lying there for too long, he muttered. He would tell Kyubi when he was done thinking. It wasn't a very good idea to disturb the fox. Now he had some other business to take care of. He closed his eyes momentarily and flopped down on the ground. Pushing the thoughts away for the moment, he focused on his current problem. The moment he had been restrained, he had realized that he would have to use that technique to make sure that they wouldn't be able to find out his real identity or memories or knowledge about the future. So that meant that he would have to fool them, to make them believe that he really had a problem with remembering everything. Claiming amnesia was so simple and unoriginal that it wouldn't be accepted so easily. He most likely wouldn't be able to get through all those tests and would only end up with some real big questions directed at him. So that meant that he would have to do something so utterly ridiculous that nobody would ever even think about the possibility of Obito having done it himself. He was going to seal his own mind away, along with many memories, in a way that only he could have access to them. He had just the perfect seal in mind. It had been an unfinished seal that Jiraiya and Naruto had been developing during their training as a defense for the Sharingan and its mind techniques. They had never gotten to finish it, but after his sensei's death and Sasuke's blind revenge, not mention Madara, Naruto had worked nearly a whole year with several Kage Bunshin to finish it. He had been able to safely seal away his mind in the future, so he knew that it worked. Now he only had to make some slight tweaks so that it would look like some kind of deliberate seal to make him forget what happened to him, and conveniently also how he got out of the boulders. Now he only had to think up some vague images to put into the surface of the seal so that anyone looking at it would get the impression that he had been saved or something. An anonymous savior that wanted to remain unknown? It sounded strange and suspicious enough that it might actually work. He frowned before shrugging. He would work out the vague memory part on the go. Yet, Naruto couldn't help but feel slightly bad about hiding this big secret from his precious people, even if it was the right thing to do. I have to protect them, even if it is from the truth. With this new determination, he bit on his thumb to draw blood, accepted the demon's chakra that it was sending to him, and started focusing with all his might on the tiring process that he was facing. He might not be able to focus on many things at once, but if he was focused on something, he wouldn't stop until he was done. Let's do it. Couple of days later. A skill that most ninja were able and forced to teach themselves was to wake up so quietly that it was impossible for those around you to know whether you were awake or asleep. For this reason, Naruto forced himself to relax as soon as he got back to the world of the consciousness and started studying his surroundings. The mattress he was lying on felt very familiar, as did the specific type of sheets that were keeping him warm. A moment later, he realized that he had been changed out of clothes and nearly completely bandaged. This included his face, his torso, and even all of his limbs. He felt like a mummy. Holding back his reaction, he scanned his surroundings for any obvious chakra signatures. There was no one around him. He couldn't hear a heartbeat either. Deeming it safe to wake up, he opened his eye. It was a lot easier to do, as if it had been healed extensively, which was most likely the case. Konoha valued the Uchiha's eyes after all. He blinked slowly as he observed the one color that overwhelmed his vision. White. It is far too white in here. For someone as experienced with hospitals as Naruto was, it hadn't taken the no 13-year-old long to figure out that he was, indeed, waking up in a hospital. He glanced around ever so slightly and let out a sigh of relief as he recognized the layout of the room. It was one of the better rooms, since they had their own mini bathroom, which included a toilet. Thank Kami. He really had to use one. Gritting his teeth to keep himself from hissing out in pain, he slowly sat up. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed and grabbed the infusion stand, which held up the liquid that was being injected in his body. Seeing as the needles in his skin were connected to the bag with transparent liquid, whatever it was, he could better take it with him. He tested the weight on his feet and took a couple of steps to orientate himself before heading towards the toilet. He was glad that he didn't have to use the infusion stand for support. A few minutes later, he opened the door again, his face a little more relieved, though it would be difficult to see with all the bandages. He had been about to head back to his bed, but his attention was caught by a certain familiar sight in the windows. There were only 3 faces. As Naruto stared at the faces, he couldn't help but shiver. This was another piece of all the proof that he really was back in time. No 4th and 5th face to accompany the other 3. No marks on the rocks where they had made room for the upcoming 6th face that was rumored, read, known, and recognized by all of Konoha to be for him. He had taken so much pride in that. He had worked so hard for it, until he had ruined everything. Sasuke, Sakura, Sai, Hinata, Niji, Lee, all the others, Bachan, Erosenin, Iruka, Kakashi Sensei. His expression and mood turned dark. He would get his revenge. The sound of the doorknob being moved was the only thing that would keep Naruto from being startled. He decided to play it cool and wait for his visitor. After all, he could finally let his own confusion show, something he had cropped up within himself since the fox wasn't exactly someone you could go to with that kind of stuff. Pulling his acting skills together, embracing Obito's identity just momentarily before letting go, he continued to stare in front of him. The door had not moved yet, as if the person holding the handle was reluctant to enter. This confused the ninja. Who would be afraid to come face and face with me? Wait, no would be afraid to come face and face with Obito? He corrected himself, and the answer came not much later. All right. Well, if he didn't want a confrontation yet, then Naruto could make it easier for him. With quick silent movements, which was slightly more difficult with the infusion stand, He was back under the sheets of his bed before the door opened. There was a pause, as the visitor was most likely staring at his sleeping form, followed by a soft gasp. Naruto took note of the tone of relief that it had contained, as well as disappointment. He could hear the visitor nearly rush to his sleeping form, gently putting a hand on his as to confirm that he was actually there. Naruto frowned mentally, noting that the hand felt very tiny. Sure, his sensei should be a kid like him, but also strangely feminine. There was a sound that let him know that the visitor moved a chair next to his bed. Naruto had to hold back a flinch as a hand was put down on his forehead, as if checking his temperature. "Oh, Obito, I'm so glad." The voice choked up ever so slightly. Wait a minute, that was not his sensei's voice either. That was not sensei after all. He couldn't help but feel somewhat relieved and disappointed at the same time. Knowing that he could not wake up out of nowhere, he made sure to frown slightly in acknowledgement as the visitor moved her hand again. The hand stilled in wonder before moving it through his hair as if to find another reaction. That felt pretty good actually. Moving his head ever so slightly, Naruto started to wake up. Obito? His eye opened ever so slowly as he prepared himself to see a stranger. You do not know her. Obito knew her. You don't. He desperately tried to feel guilty as he took in her face. It was so incredibly relieved, so full of joy. And he was going to ruin it with 3 simple words. Who are you? Yeah, he felt like an official jerk. Chapter 6, Suppressing Weight. It was as if the weather in Konoha was welcoming the once-crushed ninja back in their midst. For it was a rare, beautiful day in the hidden village. The sky was clear, with the exception of a few fluffy white clouds. The sun was shining brightly, and the warm temperature that it provided allowed everyone to walk around comfortably without needing any thick clothes. Even the tense atmosphere, caused by the war, couldn't completely suppress the lively spirit of Konoha's citizens that day. They were nearly all a little happier and more cheerful than normal. Even the depressed and grieving people managed to crack a smile that day. Small children were playing in the park, while their watchful mothers were exchanging the last juicy gossips. Those that were working were also affected by the weather because of the cheerful people that they came in contact with. The shinobi took advantage of the nice weather by going to train to improve their skills, instead of doing so later in more dreary circumstances. The few genin that were doing drank missions in the village complained less than normal. Well, except those that had to stay inside and couldn't enjoy the weather. In the meantime, bored civilian children played together, while a few other teenagers were relaxing in company of their friends while watching the clouds drift by in a rather lazy manner. All in all, the people of Konoha were in a good mood. Well, nearly everyone. There was an exception. This exception came in the form of a certain scarred, black-haired, onid shinobi in the hospital that wasn't very happy. No, quite the opposite. Naruto, currently otherwise known as Uchiha Obito, was brooding. He was currently staring out of the window, absently studying all the tiny details of the famous faces made out of stone, staying completely silent for a long time. His visible eyebrow was furrowed, the other being hidden by the bandages that hid the upper left part of his face. His lips were thinned and slightly scowled. Unknown to him, his expression was pulling off the brooding nature perfectly, as he now had the whole Uchiha demeanor to support it. Especially his narrowed eye showed his bad mood as he stood with his arms crossed in front of the window, as the usual spark that lightened his eye was absent. A wheelchair stood forgotten behind him. For some reason, they wouldn't let him stand for long periods of time, saying one of his legs needed more rest. It didn't matter that he had been walking around for the last couple of months. No, for them, it only made it worse. Something about pushing his body too far and now paying for it. TCH, he had managed just fine without it. They were probably just looking for a reason to keep him in the room. After all, he still needed to be reevaluated, especially mentally. Oh boy, he thought. He hoped that he would be able to bluff himself out of that one. Will the seal be good enough? Naruto pondered as he continued staring at the Hokage monument, ignoring the fact that the nurses would kill him if they found him standing instead of sitting in the wheelchair like they had ordered him to do. He once again ran the effects and processes of the seal through his mind and nodded to himself. If that won't work, I don't know what will, he mumbled. After all, Back in the future, Jiraiya and Naruto had put a lot of time into it. Erosenin had been in charge of the stability of the base of the seal, so Naruto trusted it completely. The part that he had modified might, not that he was expecting it, to give him some trouble, but the foundation of the seal should be stable enough to prevent any accidents. I'm sure you would lecture me about modifying seals again if you were here though. Naruto mumbled under his breath, knowing that there was no one to hear him, and that if they could, that they wouldn't be able to make out his words. The seal was quite a masterpiece if he had to say so. The seal as a whole had actually two functions. First, the most important and strongest part of the seal made sure that Naruto's future memories and also very important Kyuubi's presence were hidden from any visitors that came along in his mind. The downside of sealing his memories away was that it made them somewhat vague and blurrier at times. If push came to shove, he might even lose a few small memories altogether. Still, it was a risk he was willing to take. The second part of the seal, which overlapped and therefore hid the first from sight in his mind, was not as strong. Though it was hiding and blocking most of Obito's memories, it was, by far, not sealed as tightly as his own, meaning that there would be certain triggers around him that would resurface the memories. Once triggered, the memory would only rarely reseal itself, but it would happen. All in all, this should fit the behavior pattern of people with amnesia. Naruto had been very glad that he had once debated this with Sakura. It was very useful to have had a medic ninja as your best friend. Of course, there were downsides for the second seal as well. 1. He could be overwhelmed once a memory was triggered, much like what happened when his FA Minato Sensei had said, "You are late." Another downside was that Obito's memories might become clearer than his own future memories. He would just have to keep remembering himself that he was not Obito and that the real Obito would wake up eventually. On the bright side, the sealing didn't really affect the strange presence of Obito in his actually Obito's mind, though he did feel strangely distant from the boy ever since he had placed the seal. Yet it wouldn't cause too much trouble. Besides, he could just unseal the whole thing if it was necessary, even though it would give him a headache similar to the one he would have if he were to fall headfirst to the ground after jumping from the Hokage monument. Another plus was that seal should help him to act more naturally when being questioned. Since it would be more difficult to remember things, it would make his acting more sincere. Well, Sensei, at least I can put this seal to better use than we had ever thought it would have. Ever so slowly, a smirk graced his lips, which his Uchiha genes made look slightly devious without even trying. He might make a convincible amnesia case after all, and if that didn't work, the seal would give him another excuse altogether. Help, someone messed with my mind, so I can't really tell you anything about what happened. He could already see himself acting it out in front of the medics. It did sound stupid, but it would probably work. But it was better to go with the amnesia route for now. After all, he shouldn't be aware of any seal. Now he only had to make sure that he would act like someone who had lost his memories would act, which meant that he would have to be confused by nearly everything and everyone that he knows and sees, at least until a memory of Obito was triggered from the seal. Troublesome. Now that he had made his decision, his brooding demeanor returned, having been trying not to think about it. All these inner conflicts about the seal were not the main reason for the fact that he was currently in such a bad mood, which made him brood in Uchiha style. No, it had been the meeting with that girl that had. He hated acting like a jerk. A few hours ago, the one eye that the Uchiha possessed blinked slowly at the girl and slowly repeated the question that caused the girl to falter. Ever so slowly, he nudged the hand away from his face. No matter how good that little affection felt, he would not let a stranger touch him. "Who are you?" Naruto was fully well aware of who she was, having gone through a few of Obito's memories. This was why he could note the differences between the image of the girl in his mind and the one before him. She looked awful. Not the ugly kind of awful, but the thoroughly stressed and depressed kind of awful. The lines under her eyes were clearly visible, and her hair didn't look as taken care of anymore. The hope that had been shining in her eyes, though, and the kindness that accompanied it was more familiar, though. Even the slight hope that was in her eyes was a familiar feature. Unfortunately, he had to ruin it. Two brown eyes widened in surprise and disbelief as he looked at her. She had stood up from her chair the moment he had made the first sign of waking up. Then as soon as he had opened his eye and looked at her, she had been moving towards him. Her arms reached out to hug him, like Sakura would when she had been worried about him, just before he had spoken up. Her happiness crumbling away from her face when he backed away slightly like most ninja would, uncomfortable with a hug from a stranger. It took all of Naruto's experience in acting to keep the blank and slightly frustrated look on his face. Simply by looking at her, he could feel several memories struggle to come to surface, but it was not enough to be actually triggered. He made even extra effort by studying her brown hair, her haircut, the purple rectangles that were present on her face, and the kind energy that she was radiating towards him. The caring energy she was directing towards him felt great, but it was not the amount that Obito was familiar with. Come on, memory, trigger. Remember, don't tell me I sealed the memories too tight. He secretly hoped that a memory would trigger right at this moment, so he would be able to just talk with the girl, but unfortunately this was not the case. Fear actually flickered in her eyes, and she took a somewhat frantic step towards him, reaching out to touch his arm again. But his reflex kicked in, and he withdrew his arm ever so slightly. "Oh, Obito," she nearly begged him as she managed to grasp his arm this time. He let her do so reluctantly, but the fact that he tensed momentarily as soon as she touched him told her enough. "You really don't remember me?" She nearly gasped. There was a long, tense pause before she reluctantly created more distance between them to make him more comfortable, unable to ignore his obvious discomfort any longer. Naruto made sure to frown at her and study her in a more obvious manner. She watched him study her carefully and return the favor. Her eyes lingered at the bandages that hid his eye and the other part of his face that was also wrapped in the process, which effectively the other scars on his face. She waited for any reaction, but after a while he still didn't react. "It's me, Rin," she continued, looking hopeful as she came a little closer. Shit, it isn't working, Naruto thought, starting to form a headache from all the effort he was putting into remembering. I will have to take a look at that stupid seal, he thought, starting to fear that he had put too much chakra in it during activation. Though activating the first seal with that much chakra was necessary, there is no way I could have done it any differently. I should know you, shouldn't I? He mumbled, rubbing his head in confusion and trying to calm the throbbing in his head. To her, it was the confirmation that he didn't recognize her. Rin's expression fell apart soon after, and he could see tears starting to well up in her eyes. Rin, though a kind and slightly emotional kunoichi, was usually not one to cry so quickly, but the stress, the sudden relief at his survival, and then the big disappointment made it pretty normal for her to react that way. "Ah, no. Please don't let her cry." He quickly started to wave his hands in an awkward manner, having easily taken up Obito's antics. "Hey, wait. Please don't be upset. I didn't mean to." He tried to calm her down, but his actions only made her break down even more. Naruto froze, suddenly unsure of what to do. Then he noticed a certain urge appearing inside of him that could count as the first sign that he knew her. He wanted to hug her. Finally, he reacted instinctively, pushing aside the body's reluctance to touch the stranger, since he hadn't really unlocked a real memory of knowing her, yet he focused on the tiny need he felt to hug her before it disappeared. She was slightly startled as he gently and awkwardly pulled her towards him as he sat up on the bed. "I'm sorry." He didn't know what else to say. She started sobbing silently, her shoulders shaking. At the same time, she never let the tears leave her mind. How do I know you?" he dared to ask. He was caught off guard when she suddenly drew away from him, startling him slightly. "So sorry, I shouldn't actually be here. I really shouldn't. I was actually ordered that." She didn't finish her sentence as she turned around. She quickly walked away a few steps before stopping. "I mean, maybe you really aren't. But then I saw you and I just knew that." She kept cutting off her own sentences, making Naruto wonder if he wasn't allowed to know what was going on. Did they see him as a danger? As a threat? What if they really saw him as an imposter? Unseen to Rin, his eye widened in panic and he felt his heart speed up at the thought. Just before he could freak out, she spoke again, forcing him back to reality. Her voice softened. "It is just that. Minato Sensei warned me already, but I didn't really listen and I had hoped that." She started mumbling quickly and walked away again, creating more distance between Naruto and her. The information that she shared gave Naruto the opportunity to react in an attempt to stop her from going. Minato sensei? He frowned for a while before a clear image of the man resurfaced in his mind, and he nodded. Yeah, I know high weight, you know him too. You call him sensei. Does that mean that? He blinked when his ears picked up the sound of the door being opened and quickly closed. Hey, please wait. He called out, but he was too late. It hadn't worked. She was already gone. He suddenly realized that he was very much alone once again. Naruto stared at the door and sighed heavily, suddenly feeling very lonely. After months of being alone, he had yet to feel actually that lonely. Strange as it had been, he had become kind of used to being lonely in the last few years of his usual life, especially when all his loved ones had. Now he was once again experiencing what it was like to be surrounded by dear ones. It made him realize how much he had missed it. The presence of the girl might not trigger any memories yet, but he did feel the warm feeling that Sakura had always brought up in him, very similar to the presence of other close friends. Plucking at the sheets in his hands, he felt his mood quickly go down the hill. Maybe I should just have recognized her anyway. He grumbled mentally at himself, but knew he couldn't just change his approach. He never had been good with emotional girls, but this must be one of the worst situations to be such a jackass. Shaking his head, he got out of the bed once more. Maybe some Hokage monument watching would do him some good. He frowned when he felt a tingling sensation appear in his bad leg after about 10 minutes of standing still. That hadn't happened before. It felt like that itchy healing feeling that he had experienced once before. What have they done to it? He muttered. Kyuubi's chakra should have kept it. A sudden memory from his own life resurfaced in form of Sakura lecturing him. Kyuubi's chakra is very useful to manipulate to heal you and others. Still, there are many medics that don't have enough control or knowledge on how to use it. Most will even not notice the presence of the chakra because it is often so small, and they are focused on using their own chakra to direct your own chakra. Sakura told him, having hit him lightly on the back of his head after he made an indirect comment about a medic ninja that had messed up with Kyuubi's healing process once, which was why he had recognized it. His arm had been acting strange for a whole month. It happened rarely that the healing of the demon and the medic ninja clashed, but it seemed that luck wasn't on his side. At least in the future, most medic ninja had known what to do if it did happen. He let his hand run down his leg, trying to find the spot that had previously held the tiny amount of the fox's chakra. It was really gone. Damn. So now he would have to heal it the normal way. That could take at least a week if the skill level of the medic ninja were of any indication. The sound of the door opening made him straighten in surprise. He turned around and came face in face with a very motherly-looking medic ninja who smiled at him when she spotted him. At least, until she realized what was going on. Good to see that you are Owl. Wait a minute. What the hell are you doing? You shouldn't stand on your leg, brat. Let alone get out of bed. Get back in. I need to check up on you, and then Naruto quickly rushed to follow the medic's orders. Another result of having had a medic ninja as your best friend was that he immediately knew when he shouldn't push his luck. He had enough experience to know that medics could be very scary when they needed to be present. They had been pushing him to sit in the wheelchair immediately after the small checkup and interrogation, which had been kind of straightforward to answer no, I don't remember. I don't know. Obito? Could you repeat that question, please? And the like. At least he had passed the basic tests. His head may be healed, but the clear signs of possible head trauma were still there. Unfortunately for them, he wasn't really one to listen to their orders when it didn't come from a certain pink-haired one with a temper and dangerous fists that she wasn't afraid to use. After all, she could easily heal him afterwards and was fully aware of that. His frown increased as he once again went over the first meeting with Rin. Having watched as the hopeful face of this Rin had dropped and had eventually nearly started to tear up had made him feel bad. He had not meant for her to nearly cry. The fact that Obito had a crush on her much like what he had felt for Sakura once only made it worse. He sighed. That was another similarity between the Obito and him. It felt so strange how natural Obito's memories felt. Sometimes it felt as if it actually had been his life. But that would be silly, right? Naruto thought, shoving the thought away and got his mind back on track. He continued brooding. Is this why the Uchiha always act so grumpy? They are grumpy because they can't help but act like a jerk. Welcoming the different topic, he thought back to the Obito's memories of the Uchiha clan and compared it with his own life. He had been an orphan, the idiot that everyone laughed at when he spoke of his dream. Obito had a family, but they hadn't been proud of him at all, which Naruto had concluded from the few memories he had trespassed. There was always this lingering loneliness and shame in those memories. The feeling of being a failure. Naruto's eyes narrowed. He hoped he wouldn't have to deal with his clan anytime soon. He wondered if they had been alerted. Having been a selected candidate for the Hokage, even though a large part of the training had not been started before. That accident did give him some knowledge about these kinds of special cases. If a shinobi was labeled as being in an unknown state, the family would rarely be informed. In combination with the fact that it would give the Hokage a lot of issues with the Sharingan eye, he suspected that he was procrastinating dealing the matter for now. The Uchiha clan was prone to become a source of a headache after all. Naruto should know, not to ignore the fact that he had had only one Uchiha to deal with. A very annoying, stubborn, and dangerous one, that is. He didn't want to know how to deal with a whole bunch of them. He shuddered. Nope, the Hokage was probably keeping it silent for now. At the moment, Naruto didn't mind at all. Still, there had been a few memories with the Uchiha clan that had made him curious as well. There had been this feeling of being proud of someone, the feeling of being loved, the idea that family was important, which was why the disappointment in himself was so heavy. He had failed someone he held dear to him in some way. He absently heard the door creaking open, but Naruto ignored it. He was too busy pondering about the strange conflict of emotions. Obito? Oh, it is good to see you awake and well. The medics had been told to alert me as soon as possible. We need to ask some more questions. The voice was familiar, and Naruto turned around to see Minato enter the room, Rin close behind. He twitched uncomfortably at her sight and tried to extensively focus on Minato instead. Being the observant ninja that he was, the blonde immediately noticed the tension between the two. It didn't take him long to put two and two together. I see that you have met. The pair winced slightly, and Naruto suddenly felt himself becoming nervous. There was something about that tone that just made him twitchy. Rin, he simply said, and the girl suddenly looked even guiltier. You know that you weren't supposed to visit him, right? Hi, sensei. Though it was kind of interesting to watch the interaction between his father and his student, Naruto made sure to keep up the act. So he is your sensei, he exclaimed in a rather relieved manner. Blue eyes flickered to him for a moment before returning to Rin. The man ran a hand through his hair and sighed in a rather tired manner. Rin, I know that you wanted to see him. He trailed off, looking at her sternly for ignoring his unofficial order. I just had to make sure that he was really all right, that he was really there. The last word went unspoken. You know that I had warned you about several possible situations that could have happened, right? But sensei, he is REA, right? The tone was slightly sharper and Rin's shoulders sagged in defeat. Hi, sensei, she said, softer this time. Naruto suddenly felt a lot less comfortable. They were acting like he wasn't even there. Hey, what is going on? He asked. The absence of easily accessible memories was slightly getting to him. It gave him a frustrating feeling that he would have to bear until another memory was triggered. Calm down, Obito. Naruto made a slight face at actually being called Obito by his father, which the man easily caught. He didn't comment on it, but he did give him a look that made Naruto avoid eye contact. Obito, I assume that you don't remember Rin? He asked. Naruto's eyes flickered to the girl in question, and he scratched the back on his neck in an awkward manner. No, but... He paused. Should I actually say it? He wondered, but the decision was made quickly when Minato had seen his expression. But what Obito? He still hesitated. But what Obito? Not that tone again. She does feel familiar. He mumbled, feeling slightly like a stubborn child. Please repeat that, Obito, Minato said, and Naruto noticed that he was constantly using Obito's name in his sentence. He still allowed a slight frown on his face to appear as another memory of Minato calling him that before resurfaced momentarily, but then went back in hiding. She does feel familiar, he stated, louder this time. The girl seemed sad that he still didn't recognize him, but she did seem glad that she was at least somewhat familiar. He wondered whether she had thought that the hug had been simply given because he had pitied her. The relieved look that Naruto received from the girl lifted his mood ever so slightly. Well, We will try to help you remember later on. But now we will have to go to the Hokage, Minato stated as he walked towards him. Feeling slightly defensive all of a sudden, Naruto took a step back. Old man. Now. Already. Why? Minato frowned and paused in his step. Obito, do you know who the Hokage is? The boy in front of him once again adopted that deep, thoughtful face that he hadn't often seen on Obito's face before, except for that time before the accident when they had discussed Kakashi's past. Yeah, I think so, he muttered. To Minato, that was a pretty clear sign that he did have trouble remembering. Minato's worry suddenly got a lot deeper. He had hoped that the damage wouldn't have been too bad, but if this was any indication, it was pretty bad. Still, the fact that he was standing in front of them, alive, was already a miracle on its own. How the hell had the boy managed to heal like that? You will remember soon enough. Now, seeing as you already changed clothes, Naruto sheepishly smiled at him as he looked down at his dark blue t-shirt and pair of black shorts. We can go right now. Take my hand, and I will bring us there. I heard that you were supposed to let your right leg rest for a while, the blonde stated as he glanced at the wheelchair next to the boy. The very sheepish smile widened even more. These sheepish smiles that Minato got in response relieved him slightly. He wasn't the only one, as the girl next to him couldn't help but smile and get slightly teary-eyed at the sight. Holding out his hand to the boy, he waited patiently. Obito hesitated only for a second before he took it. He glanced to Rin, who smiled at him. Naruto couldn't help but give a small smile in return, suddenly feeling slightly awkward. Rin, let's have dinner with Kakashi after your shift. That is, if he got back from his mission yet. My treat, Sensei stated, and Naruto was suddenly aware of the eyes that were boring in on his face. There was a slight unrest of memories shifting his mind at the moment, but other than frowning momentarily, nothing was triggered. Minato's face suddenly seemed a lot grimmer. Hi, the girl replied happily, and then left the room. Just before she turned, Naruto could see the worried look that slipped on her face, or rather, he saw the happy attitude slipping from her face. Was his lack of memory that distressing? Was he doing this the wrong way? Hold on, the man said, as he drew in closer, nearly hugging Naruto, which made his heart beat just a little faster. The situation, his father standing in front of him, was still so unreal. It was the last warning that he got before he was swept away to the Hokage Tower. Hopefully the interrogation wouldn't resort to the use of any Yamanakas, though for some reason, Naruto didn't really feel confident in his luck anymore.